Do you believe a dog can protect an entire family? In the midst of a fierce snowstorm, when hope had nearly frozen over, Titan, the loyal German shepherd, stood watch. His fur weighed down by snow. He didn't move, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for a master who never returned. Time stretched on, each minute heavier than the last, but Titan remained, a silent guardian. As the storm raged, an unsettling feeling crept in, a threat he couldn't see but felt deep within. But no matter what, he didn't move. His loyalty was a promise, unspoken yet unbreakable. But would it be enough to face the unexpected danger ahead? Could Titan do the impossible to protect those he loved? The night storm arrived quickly, the wind howling as if it wanted to tear the dark sky apart. Rain poured down in torrents, slamming against the windows of the Sullivan home, nestled quietly on Oak Ridge Drive. The thunder rumbled, echoing through the house, making the old wooden structure groan as though carrying a burden of pain. Mira sat on the sofa, her eyes fixed on the window, watching the storm outside, where the strong gusts of wind shook the tree branches violently. In the dimly lit room, Lily, Mira's 2-year-old daughter, slept soundly in her soft crib. Beside her, Titan, the family's massive German shepherd, lay curled up, his muscular body forming a solid circle around Lily. His form, like an invisible wall, protected the child from any danger that might creep in. Even with the fierce storm raging outside, Titan lay still, his eyes as bright as jewels, watching every movement in the house, catching every sound in the air. Mira felt a strange sense of peace deep in her chest as she watched the scene. The world outside seemed to be swept away in the storm, but in this home, amidst the howling wind, there was only Titan's protection. Mira bit her lip, a vague feeling of anxiety filling her heart. Her husband, Ethan, was no longer here to protect their family. He had gone, leaving Mira and their little girl with a loss that couldn't be replaced. But Titan, this dog, was still here, a steadfast presence standing firm against any storm. She looked at Titan and knew that no matter how the storm outside raged, within these walls, Titan was the only protector she could trust. He wasn't just a pet. He was a vital part of their family, keeping them safe in times of danger. Titan didn't just protect their bodies. He protected their hearts, guarding the memories and love they had built together. And in that moment, Mira felt the unwavering loyalty and unconditional love Titan had for her and Lily. The wind howled against the window, but Titan stayed still, never taking his eyes off Lily's crib. Mira sat quietly, feeling a deep peace inside, knowing that no matter what the storm outside brought, Titan would always be by their side, a constant, irreplaceable protector. But Mira couldn't help but notice the change in Titan's demeanor. His body tensed, and his sharp eyes were focused on the door, where a strange sound had emerged from the storm. Mira could feel the shift in the air, the tension slowly creeping through the room. Titan, though not moving, wore an expression of resolve, as if preparing to face an invisible threat that only he could sense. Mira sighed, her instincts as a mother kicking in. She looked at Titan, feeling his unease. Without a word, she knew Titan was doing something crucial, protecting Lily, protecting her family from any danger that might come. The silence in the room grew heavy, but Mira wasn't scared. She trusted Titan. It was that unconditional trust she'd placed in him for years. Titan remained unmoving, his eyes locked onto every shift outside the door. For Mira, moments like these were a constant reminder of Titan's unwavering loyalty. Nothing could touch this family as long as Titan stood guard. Gently, she pulled the blanket up around Lily. But in her heart, she knew there was no need for her or Lily to worry. Titan wouldn't let anything happen to them. Titan continued to watch, his eyes bright as lights cutting through the darkness. The bond between Titan and the Sullivan family, especially with Lily, had been built in moments like these. He was more than just a dog. Titan was family, a protector they could rely on during the toughest times. Yet, deep down, Mira knew this bond began long before, back when Ethan was still with them. Mira thought back to the days when their family was whole. She and Ethan had raised Titan from the time he was a pup, with his soft fur and innocent eyes. Ethan, strict but full of love, had trained Titan himself. They had faced many trials, from intense training sessions to long trips when Ethan was still serving in the military. Titan had learned to be vigilant, to protect, and above all, to be fiercely loyal to his master. Ethan used to tell Mira that Titan wasn't just a military dog, but a companion, a brother in arms. Every time Titan stayed focused, watching for any movement, Ethan would beam with pride, knowing that Titan had learned patience, calmness in every situation. Those lessons weren't just military skills. They were acts of love and commitment to their family. Titan had become not only Ethan's protector, but also the protector of Mira and Lily through all the pain and hardship. After Ethan's death, Mira felt his absence in every corner of their home. The house seemed emptier than ever before. But Titan remained, still steadfast in his role, silently guarding Mira and Lily with strength that never wavered. Every night, as the winds howled and storms raged outside, Titan was the first to stand firm, wrapping his family in courage and loyalty. Mira could feel that, though Ethan was gone, the love Titan had for their family remained, unbroken. Now, Titan was more than just a dog to Mira. He was a friend, a constant companion for the Sullivan family, the protector they could trust. Each day, as Mira watched Titan care for Lily, keeping her safe without hesitation, she felt a part of Ethan still lived on in Titan. But when she sat alone in the living room, eyes drifting to the old pictures of Ethan, the pain of loss hit her again, as powerful as waves crashing against the shore. Mira gently turned over an old black and white photograph, where Ethan and Titan stood together in military uniform. Ethan's smile was bright, Titan's eyes sparkling with joy. She could recall every detail of the picture, the days when their family was complete, the days when Titan, despite being a highly trained soldier, was still an innocent dog, eager to greet Ethan every time he returned home from a long deployment. She remembered the peaceful afternoons when Ethan would sit by the sofa, Titan resting his head on Ethan's lap, eyes fixed on the stories Ethan would tell about work, about the struggles and victories. Those moments had become sweet memories, stories that once seemed like they would never end, but now drifted away like a dream. Mira sighed, running her fingers over the photograph, the usual signs of aging or simply a shift in mood. Titan wasn't just tired. It was as though he was carrying a weight, one that Mira couldn't see but felt deeply within her heart. His loyalty, which had always been steadfast, now seemed to bear the heavy burden of grief, just as she did. Mira sat in the stillness of the room, the quiet almost suffocating. Only Titan's steady breathing broke the silence, his presence a soft comfort in the absence of Ethan. But even that wasn't enough to ease the growing ache in her chest. The emptiness was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. She and Lily had learned to live without Ethan, but every night, every moment, that loss felt sharper, more real. And then Titan did something strange. He suddenly stood up, his body stiff, his ears pricked, eyes flashing with an intensity Mira hadn't seen in months. He was still, like a statue, watching the window, every muscle in his body taut. The air around them seemed to hold its breath. Mira's heart skipped a beat. She followed his gaze, straining her ears, but all she could hear was the wind whistling through the cracks in the window. Titan wasn't moving, but he was clearly on high alert. His focus was unwavering, his gaze fixed on the door, and his body trembled with a silent energy that Mira couldn't ignore. Outside, a car passed by, but Titan didn't budge. His eyes didn't leave the window. Mira felt a tightening in her chest as a wave of unease washed over her. The cars didn't feel normal. There was something unsettling about them, the way they appeared and disappeared without explanation, without reason. Titan was watching them, tracking their every move, as if they were a threat she couldn't see. Her mind raced. Titan knew the sounds of this place, the cars, the wind, the animals outside. But something was off. Titan was sensing a change, a subtle shift in the air that Mira couldn't understand. The unease inside her grew, matching the unease in Titan's still, rigid form. This wasn't like before. This wasn't just a dog acting protective. Titan was reacting to something that felt wrong, something that only he could sense. It had been a long time since she had felt this way, since Ethan had passed away. Mira hadn't been aware of any real danger. But now, as she watched Titan, it was as if a shadow had cast itself over their home, one that only Titan could see, only Titan could feel. For the first time since Ethan's death, Mira felt the weight of something creeping closer to her family, something they couldn't escape. And Titan was the only one who could sense it. Days had passed, and Titan had changed. He wasn't the joyful, energetic dog he once was. He wasn't leaping to greet her in the mornings anymore, his eyes no longer bright with the excitement of the day ahead. Instead, there was a deep weariness in him, a quiet sadness that seemed to have settled in his bones. Mira couldn't deny it. Titan had changed. He wasn't just grieving for Ethan's absence, he was carrying something heavier, something more dangerous, something Mira couldn't quite place, but she knew deep down that whatever it was coming for them. And Titan, in his silent way, was preparing for it. Mira wondered if Titan could sense the changes in their family, if he understood that everything had shifted, that Ethan was no longer here to protect them. She also wondered if Titan was, in some way, protecting her family instinctively, using the intuition of a loyal friend. Did he know something she couldn't understand? The change in Titan only deepened Mira's sense of growing tension, as though something was about to happen that she couldn't stop. But while she was still trying to make sense of Titan's strange behavior, reality kept pushing Mira into new challenges. Every day, she struggled to balance work with caring for Emily, her young daughter who was growing up without the guiding hand of a father. Each morning, Mira faced the routine tasks, but her mind was always spinning with the pain of losing Ethan. Not a moment went by without feeling his absence. She tried to juggle the piles of paperwork, her work at school, and the daily chores, but it only seemed to drain her further. Every time she sat down and looked at their old family photo, her heart twisted. The memories of Ethan, of the happy days when their family was whole, now felt like broken pieces she could never put back together. A new, looming fear began to haunt Mira. Financial struggles were threatening the stability of her family. Her salary as a teacher wasn't enough to support 3 people. She realized that raising Emily alone wasn't going to be easy, and everything had become harder than ever without Ethan here to help. The bills piled up, and the calls from the bank and utilities companies had become an unavoidable part of her daily life. One afternoon, Mira sat in the kitchen, staring at the numbers on the papers, her heart heavy. Emily was playing in her room, but Mira felt the weight of loneliness and helplessness pressing in. She couldn't stop thinking that if Ethan were here, things would be different. He would know what to do to get them through this. But now, All that was left was emptiness, and Mira knew she had to carry it all. She glanced over at Titan, lying quietly by the window, and sighed. Titan was still her loyal friend, still guarding their family without asking for anything in return. She felt lucky to have him by her side, but the worry for the future still haunted her day after day. Mira's world had changed forever since Ethan's passing, and no matter how hard she tried, that loss was always present, always a shadow over the Sullivan family's life. One evening, as the rain pattered steadily against the window, Mira sat beside Titan, feeling like there was nothing left but loneliness. Emily had fallen asleep in her room, and the house felt eerily quiet. Mira sighed, then gently stroked Titan's head. "You know, Titan, sometimes I just wish there was someone here to talk to," she whispered, feeling the softness of his fur beneath her fingers. "He's gone. And now, it's just me." Titan lifted his head, his bright eyes meeting Mira's with understanding. He didn't say a word, but Mira felt the empathy in his gaze. The dog didn't need to speak. She knew Titan understood everything she was going through. Without a single word, Titan was the only comfort she had in these dark hours. Mira felt a strange connection, as if Titan wasn't just a protector, but a friend, a loyal ally who would never leave her side. She continued to talk to Titan, as though the dog could understand every word, sharing the hopeful days when their family was whole and the struggles of now. "You know," Mira said softly, "I don't know what to do anymore. Everything just feels so hard." "Everything feels so hard, but at least I have you," Mira said, her eyes slightly red, yet a soft smile spread across her face as she looked at Titan. Titan simply stared back at her, his eyes still bright and steady. Mira understood that this dog would always be by her side, never betraying or leaving her. In this uncertain and challenging world, Titan was the only protector she could trust. And that was the one thing she could cling to keep moving forward. A sense of peace settled within Mira, even though life was still filled with obstacles. She knew that Titan would never leave her family, that he would always be there, protecting them like a friend who would never betray them. The bond between Mira and Titan had deepened more than ever, with Titan being the only comfort she could rely on right now. But even that comfort couldn't hide the burdens she faced each day. That morning, Mira received another stack of bills, payments she knew she couldn't afford. Each envelope felt like a reminder of the financial struggles that were weighing her down. She sat down at the dining table, staring at the pile of papers around her. A bank statement, a utility bill, and a few everyday expenses, all waiting for an amount Mira knew she couldn't meet. These struggles were not something she had thought much about before. Ethan, with his steady income and financial plans, had always been the rock for their family. But now, without Ethan to share this burden, Mira wondered if she had the strength to carry all of it alone. These thoughts only made the pressure feel heavier. Mira began to feel despair creeping into every moment, each hour passing with a sense of unease. Not only had she lost her husband, but now that loss had brought with it a huge financial challenge. Emily needed care, the house needed upkeep, and everything was piling up on Mira's shoulders. Eventually, Mira decided to sell some items in the house. Things she and Ethan had collected together, wedding gifts, keepsakes, now became burdens she had to let go of. She looked at the couch where they once sat together, the family photo hanging on the wall, and felt heartache at the thought of selling them. But how could they survive without making this sacrifice? Mira picked up her phone, trying to call a second-hand store, but her hands trembled with the pain of this decision. Selling these precious things wasn't just a financial choice. It felt like another loss. She felt as though she was losing a part of her past, a part of Ethan. The memories of him seemed to be fading, buried beneath the weight of present struggles. Mira looked back at Titan, still sitting beside her, his eyes on her as though he understood everything. No matter how things changed, Titan was still here, and that was the only thing she could rely on in these difficult moments. Every evening, when night fell and the lights in the house began to dim, Mira would feel Ethan's absence again. But alongside that emptiness, there was something she couldn't quite explain. Titan. Replace. As Mira sat beside Titan, she felt a sense of comfort that only his silent presence could provide. Titan wasn't just guarding the house, he was guarding her heart. His loyalty, his quiet strength, gave her the courage to face each day without Ethan. Mira ran her hand through Titan's thick fur, her fingers brushing over the familiar warmth of him. She didn't need words. Titan understood everything. He was the only one who had stayed, steadfast and unshaken through every storm, both outside and within their home. In that moment, Mira realized that Titan had become more than just a protector. He was the constant in her life, the friend who stood by her side even when the world felt empty. He had become a part of their family, an irreplaceable figure who had seamlessly woven himself into their lives, filling the space left by Ethan's absence. Every night, as the house settled into silence, Mira found herself grateful for Titan. Even as the weight of loneliness and loss pressed heavily upon her, his presence reminded her that she wasn't completely alone. Titan had become the pillar of her strength, the embodiment of unconditional love and loyalty in its purest form. And as she sat there, hand resting gently on Titan's side, Mira whispered softly, "I don't know how I'd make it without you, Titan. You're the only one who understands." His steady breathing, calm and rhythmic, answered her in the only way he could, by being there, always. Titan had filled the empty space in her heart. Mira no longer felt alone. With Titan's silent presence and unwavering loyalty, the weight of her grief seemed a little more bearable. Titan didn't need to speak, but the way he looked at her, his eyes bright and full of understanding, made Mira feel safe, as though everything was going to be okay. She had never felt more clearly the invisible protection Titan offered. She wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. She was a woman who could rely on Titan, a trusted protector, a friend who would never leave. This feeling was powerful, like Titan understood everything she was going through, the fears and anxieties that she couldn't put into words. In the quiet of the night, amidst the stillness, Mira realized that Titan wasn't just protecting her physically, but also emotionally. He was her rock, the only source of comfort in a life that felt so uncertain. She could sense, more than ever, that this dog had become the only constant in her life, the one thing she could trust, as everything else around her seemed to be falling apart. As Mira glanced back at the table, where papers were stacked in disarray, a small piece of paper slipped out from the pile of old documents. She bent down, picked it up, and instantly recognized Ethan's handwriting. Her heart raced as she read the short but meaningful lines he had left behind. Mira unfolded the paper and read each word Ethan had written long ago, now more important than ever. "Titan's mission is to protect the family," the note started, sounding like simple guidance, but the more she read, the more tension she felt in each word. "If you're reading this, Titan will be the only protector left. Things are not as they seem. Trust Titan. I know this dog will always do right by you." A chill ran through Mira. This wasn't just a simple note. It made her realize that Ethan's death might not have been an accident, like she had been told. Something was being hidden, and Titan, the dog who had always been by her side, might be the only one who knew the truth Mira hadn't yet discovered. Mira sat down, the paper still clutched in her hand, her heart heavy with questions. She tried to think, but the questions kept swirling in her mind. What did Ethan know? Why did he leave this message for Titan? Could his death be tied to a bigger conspiracy? Was this note the first clue in a larger story she had never known? As Mira continued to reflect on what Ethan had left behind, a rising sense of unease filled her. She began to suspect that some hidden force was at play, and Ethan had known about it before he left. This feeling drove her to a new determination. She needed to uncover the truth, not just for Ethan, but for her own safety and that of Emily. Mira sat down at the dining table, her eyes still fixed on the note Ethan had written, her grip tight around the paper. His words didn't feel like a simple farewell. They were a warning, an essential piece in a story Mira had never been told. She couldn't help but think about the things Ethan had done, the signs he had left. But no answers ever came. She began thinking about the people around her. Frank Wilson, Ethan's old military buddy, had always seemed concerned about her family. But during their recent meetings, Mira had sensed something off in his eyes. Doubt began to creep into her mind. Could Frank have been hiding something? What was Frank's connection to Ethan's death? And did Ethan's old comrades know something she didn't? Mira thought back to her meetings with Frank, how he always dodged questions about Ethan's death, giving vague answers that never seemed to satisfy her. Then there was Sarah Monroe, the old neighbor. Mira couldn't understand why Sarah seemed to care so much about her family, always eager to help. But every time Mira mentioned Ethan, Sarah's eyes would take on a strange, almost secretive look. It was as though there was something she didn't want to say. Mira felt like everyone around her had some hidden connection she couldn't quite figure out. A wave of exhaustion hit Mira. These questions kept swirling in her mind, and she realized there was something much bigger, something important, that she hadn't yet discovered. Ethan's death wasn't just an accident. It was part of a mystery that Mira had to uncover, no matter what dangers lay ahead. The anxiety grew stronger inside her. These unanswered questions were like constant reminders that Ethan's death might only be the beginning of deeper secrets she would have to face. Mira knew that only when she uncovered the truth would her family be able to find peace again. That sense of unease was becoming overwhelming. The scattered pieces of the puzzle that Ethan had left behind, the cryptic messages, everything felt like a trail leading to a larger mystery that Mira needed to solve. She couldn't continue living in doubt, couldn't keep drowning in the ambiguity of Ethan's death. That wasn't living. It wasn't something she wanted for herself or for Emily. Mira sighed, lifting her eyes toward Titan. The dog was still lying quietly by her side, his bright eyes full of alertness. Mira realized that, no matter how difficult the journey ahead, she wouldn't be alone. Titan would always be here, always protecting her family. And now, he would be the most trusted companion on her quest for the truth. "I'm going to do this, Titan," Mira said softly, as though sharing her decision with the dog. Titan lifted his head, ears perked, listening intently to every word she said. Though he didn't need to speak, Mira knew Titan understood. He had always been able to sense her every emotion, and now his loyalty and love would be the greatest driving force for her to keep going. Mira felt a new strength rising within her. She could no longer sit idly by, waiting for the truth to come to her. She would take action, find every missing piece of the story. And when facing the challenges ahead, Mira knew that, with Titan by her side, she could overcome anything. With a firm resolve, Mira stood up, feeling her anxiety slowly give way to a new sense of purpose. She was ready to face the truth, no matter how painful or difficult it might be, and Titan would always be there to protect her, guiding her through every challenge ahead. Now, Mira had a reason, a mission, to uncover the truth about Ethan's death, to uncover why secrets still lurked in the shadows. Mira returned to the study, where Ethan's notebooks lay quietly on the desk. She opened one of the old journals, the pages yellowed with age, and began to read the words Ethan had written. Each line was a piece of the puzzle he had left behind, notes Mira had never paid attention to before. She read about Operation Blacksmith, a mission Ethan had been part of, a mission that left its mark on his military career. The notes were meticulous, from the dates to the smallest details about transactions, partners, and names Ethan had encountered. As Mira read deeper, she found clues about a weapons trafficking conspiracy. The details in Ethan's notes made her realize that what he had gone through wasn't just a series of ordinary military assignments. There was something bigger, something far more dangerous hidden behind the tasks Ethan had been involved in. One of the names mentioned in Ethan's journal was Frank Hayes. Mira froze as she read the name. Frank Hayes was an old friend of Ethan's, someone who had always seemed fully committed to supporting her family after Ethan's death. But now, seeing this name in Ethan's journal, Mira felt an unsettling sense of doubt. How could Ethan's old friend be linked to a weapons trafficking scheme? How could someone like Frank, who had always appeared friendly and caring, be involved in such dark activities? A sense of confusion and unease gripped Mira's heart. These notes weren't just about the past. They were crucial clues leading to another story. A story Mira had never considered. She couldn't help but ask herself, was Frank Hayes part of the plan behind Ethan's death? Could the relationships Ethan had built really be trusted? The suspicion inside Mira grew stronger. She knew she had to keep investigating. But now it wasn't just about finding the truth behind Ethan's death. She had to understand everything about the people around her, especially Frank Hayes, who had played such a large role in her family's life. The unanswered questions haunted her, and she knew the road ahead would not be easy. With her determination solidified, Mira began to think about her next steps in the investigation. She had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And to do that, she would need to continue reading Ethan's notes, to dig deeper into the relationships he had built, and to uncover the secrets he had kept hidden. Mira knew she had to learn more about Frank Hayes. She couldn't ignore this name. Though Frank had always been a close friend of Ethan's, his strange behavior recently made it impossible for her to trust him completely. After thinking it over, Mira decided to seek help from Sarah Monroe, the old neighbor. Sarah had always been someone Mira could rely on, a woman smart and perceptive, despite her gentle exterior. Sarah had lived on Oak Ridge Drive for a long time, and perhaps she knew more about the people around them than Mira had realized. Mira took a deep breath and called Sarah. After a few seconds, the phone rang, and Sarah's voice came through, full of concern. "Mira, what's going on? Are you okay?" Mira answered softly. "I need to talk to you about Frank Hayes, Ethan's old friend. I'm looking into him, and I need to know more." "Do you know anything about him?" Sarah was silent for a moment, then responded with a serious tone. "I'm not sure you'll like what I have to say, but I think you should know a few things." There was a slight hesitation in Sarah's voice, as if she were carefully choosing her words. Sarah began to tell Mira about Frank's past. "A man," she said. Not everyone truly understood. "Frank isn't who you think he is," Sarah said. "He's had ties to some shady people, even when he was in the military. I remember once he mentioned being involved in a campaign I didn't know much about, but the way he spoke about it, it felt very strange." Mira listened intently, her heart tightening as the hidden connections began to slowly surface. She couldn't shake the growing unease inside her as she realized Frank Hayes might be involved in darker dealings than she had ever imagined. "Thank you, Sarah," Mira said, feeling as if another crucial piece had been added to the puzzle. Sarah's words made Mira suspect that Frank wasn't as simple as he appeared. His relationship with Ethan might not have been just a friendship after all. Perhaps Frank was hiding something important, something Ethan had been trying to warn her about through his journal entries. Mira felt she was stepping into a more dangerous investigation than ever before. These clues were opening a path filled with untold secrets, and she knew that to uncover the truth about Ethan's death, she would have to confront these risky relationships. Ethan's journal entries continued to fuel Mira's suspicions. He had recorded details about Operation Blacksmith, a campaign Mira didn't fully understand. But when strange names began to appear, especially Frank Hayes, Mira couldn't ignore them. The shady actions Ethan had noted didn't seem to be coincidences. Frank, someone Mira had always thought of as a close family friend, now seemed to be linked to activities that weren't so innocent. Mira couldn't stop thinking about what Sarah Monroe had said. The details of Frank's past made her feel as though she was standing in front of a wall of mystery. She remembered her encounters with Frank, how he had always seemed friendly, but there was always something in his eyes that made Mira hesitant to fully trust him. Every time Frank inquired about her family, every answer he gave seemed vague, unclear. The sense that her family might be under surveillance was becoming more and more real. If Mira didn't continue investigating, if she didn't uncover the truth, everything might fall into silence forever. She realized that no one in her family would be fully protected unless she confronted this truth. Mira couldn't allow herself to stop. She had to keep going, not just for Ethan, but for Emily and Titan. She couldn't let the truth be buried in the shadows. She couldn't let these secrets continue haunting her family. Her resolve was stronger than ever. She would not let this go unanswered. She looked at Titan, who still stood silently, his sharp eyes never leaving her. This dog, just like Ethan, would never give up. And Mira knew she wouldn't give up either. Mira sat on the couch, the dim lights casting soft shadows over the quiet room. Emily was sound asleep in her room, but Mira couldn't shake the strange feeling that seemed to fill the house. She stood up, quietly moving toward the window to look outside. The night had fallen, and the only movement she saw was the sway of trees in the wind. But what caught her attention was a strange car parked near the gate. A wave of anxiety washed over Mira. The car was unfamiliar, parked by the side of the road, unmoving. The headlights were still on, casting a yellow light across the wet pavement from the evening rain. Mira tried to stay calm, but the sensation of being watched grew stronger. Someone was observing her family from afar, and a sense of dread began to take hold of her. Titan, always calm in dangerous situations, was now acting differently. The dog stood still, but his body was tense, ears pricked, eyes locked on the car outside. Mira could feel the tension in every step Titan took, as if he was preparing for a confrontation. No growl, no sound came from Titan, but his eyes seemed to be warning her. Something was wrong. Mira reached up and touched the window, trying to focus on the car, but it remained stationary. The strange car just sat there, offering no sign of movement, no indication that anyone was planning to leave. Mira felt the anxiety rise in her chest, but she knew she couldn't let fear take over. She had to stay calm. She couldn't panic in this situation. Time passed slowly. The car remained there, unchanged, but Titan's gaze never wavered. Every time the car moved slightly, Titan's focus sharpened even more. Though there was no growling, no vocal response from the dog, Mira could feel the tension in the air. Finally, the car started to move, slowly driving away. Mira stood up straighter, her anxiety easing as the car disappeared from view. But the sense of unease lingered. Even though the car was gone, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching her family. It was something Mira couldn't explain, but she knew, deep down, that things weren't as simple as they had seemed before. Titan remained standing, still focused on the road ahead. Mira looked at him, silently thanking him for his vigilance and loyalty. This dog, like Ethan, would always protect her family unconditionally. Mira knew that, no matter how many challenges lay ahead, Titan would always be there, always a steadfast protector, always the light in the darkness. But that didn't stop the worry from settling in her heart. Her family was being watched, and danger might be closer than ever. That feeling couldn't be easily shaken, especially when the questions still remained unanswered. One person Mira couldn't stop thinking about was Frank Hayes. While he had always seemed caring and helpful after Ethan's death, his recent behavior made Mira uneasy. Determined to understand more about Frank, Mira decided to keep an eye on his actions. She began paying closer attention to his interactions with others, quietly noting every change in how he treated her and Emily. Every time Frank appeared, Mira felt something different in his attitude, no longer the warmth and openness she had once known. Instead, he had become more cautious, avoiding direct contact and often looking around as though worried someone might overhear. Every time she asked about Ethan, especially about the relationships Frank had with him, he would deflect or give vague, non-committal answers. One afternoon, Mira ran into Frank at a nearby grocery store. The chance encounter started like any normal conversation, but Mira couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She took the initiative to ask Frank about Ethan, about the memories and the work they'd done together in the military. But as soon as Mira mentioned the journal entries about Operation Blacksmith, Frank's expression immediately shifted. "Ethan was a good man, a loyal friend," Frank replied, but his voice grew dry, rigid. "I don't think I have anything else to add about that. Everything's already been reported." Mira could feel the difference in Frank's response, and a sense of unease began to swell inside her. The unanswered questions kept swirling in her mind, and Frank's strange reaction only deepened her suspicions. Was he hiding something important about Ethan? Why was he avoiding the topics Ethan had written about in his journal? Frank's odd behavior made Mira believe he was more than just an old friend of Ethan's. Maybe he had a deeper connection to the shady events that Ethan had uncovered. And now, with these signs, Mira felt the growing tension in her relationship with Frank. Was Frank hiding the truth, or did he truly know nothing about what happened to Ethan? These questions only pushed Mira further in her determination to uncover the truth, though she couldn't foresee the dangers that lay ahead. Her suspicions about Frank Hayes had now become a critical part of the investigation she had ventured into. She knew that, to protect her family and discover the truth behind Ethan's death, she had to confront the secrets Frank was trying to hide. But the deeper Mira investigated, the more she felt watched. At first, it was just a vague sensation, but then she started noticing clear signs. Every time she went outside, strange eyes followed her. Whenever she entered a store or met someone, she felt a presence, as though someone was keeping a close eye on her every move. Mira tried not to let these thoughts consume her, but the fear kept rising. It felt like she was living in a world full of shadows, where familiar faces turned suspicious, and every encounter grew tense. Her family might be threatened from directions she couldn't control. The tension kept building, and Mira realized that the only thing she could do was continue the investigation, even though each step brought danger closer. But just as she thought she was ready to face what was coming, Titan started acting strangely, adding to the unease in Mira's heart. One afternoon, as the sky began to turn orange with the setting sun, Mira sat in the living room, working through papers. Emily was playing in the next room, and Titan lay quietly on the rug, his eyes never leaving her. Then, suddenly, Titan lifted his head, his ears perking up unusually. His body stiffened as though he had sensed something Mira couldn't hear. The dog stood up, walked toward the window and stood there, staring intently outside. Mira stood up and walked over to Titan, her eyes following the direction Titan was focused on. A stranger was standing near the gate, only a short distance from the house. The person stood still, as though waiting for something. Titan didn't move, but his body was tense, his eyes locked on the stranger, signaling to Mira that there was a potential danger. A wave of unease washed over Mira. Titan wouldn't act like this unless there was a reason. She looked out the window, but the stranger was still standing there, not moving, just staring at the house without any clear explanation for their presence. Mira couldn't understand why Titan was so alert. Was this stranger an intruder? Or was there a threat Titan had picked up on, something Mira couldn't comprehend? Mira felt trapped in a state of uncertainty, unsure of what to do next. She wanted to open the door and ask the stranger about their intentions, but Titan's display of vigilance made her hesitate. Mira watched Titan, his eyes still locked on the stranger. There was no growl, no clear reaction, but Mira knew that the dog was ready to protect her and Emily if needed. Titan wasn't just a dog, he was a warrior. The dog could sense something Mira couldn't, and she began to realize that Titan had a sharp intelligence and strong instincts she hadn't fully appreciated. In this moment, Mira understood that Titan wasn't just a loyal friend, but a formidable protector, always vigilant, always ready to defend the family from any danger. She stood still, her gaze fixed on Titan, feeling the tension in the air. Mira didn't know who the stranger outside was, but she knew one thing for sure. Titan had detected something she couldn't see. Suddenly, Mira heard a strange noise coming from the stairs, a soft sound, as though someone was moving in the darkness. Mira couldn't quite pinpoint it, but her heart began to race. She held her breath, trying to listen more carefully. It wasn't Emily's noise. Her child was still sound asleep in her room. The sound was unfamiliar, and it could only mean one thing: an intruder. The fear began to take hold. Mira stood up, slowly moving toward Titan, but the dog didn't move, still standing alert, ears pricked, focused on something Mira couldn't hear. As Mira stood up, Titan suddenly lunged forward, positioning himself between her and the door. His body stiff, his eyes glowing with alertness, Titan let out a low growl, a clear warning. Mira watched Titan and knew without a doubt that the dog wasn't just a protector, but the true guardian of her family. Mira was surprised to see Titan act like a soldier. The dog was ready to defend her and Emily without hesitation. Mira didn't have time to react as Titan blocked the door, his eyes still focused on the darkness at the bottom of the stairs. The dog was protecting the family instinctively, and Mira knew he would never back down. No growls, no barks. Titan stood there, poised to react instantly if anyone dared to enter. Mira couldn't let Titan face danger alone. She knelt down, gripping Titan's paw, her voice trembling but steady. "Thank you, Titan. You'll protect us." Mira took a deep breath, reminding herself that nothing could happen as long as Titan was by her side. As the strange footsteps drew closer, Mira understood that the tension had reached its peak. Titan, with the determination in his eyes, was no longer just a family dog. He was the priceless shield Mira could rely on in any dangerous situation. That night, as the strange noises shattered the silence in the house, Mira realized that she was not alone in these battles. Titan wasn't just a protector of the body. He had become the loyal companion, the friend she could trust through every tough moment. Mira gazed into Titan's bright eyes, seeing the courage and resilience that would never falter, even when danger threatened. Every time she felt anxious, every time she didn't know what to do next, Titan was always there, patient, steady, guarding her family without asking for anything in return. Mira knew that Titan wasn't just protecting their bodies, but their hearts as well, helping her keep faith in the face of overwhelming challenges. With each step Titan took, Mira felt his silent companionship. He wasn't just a pet, he was an irreplaceable part of the family. Every night, when Titan lay beside Emily while she slept, Mira saw the deep bond between them. Titan was Emily's loyal friend, always protecting and loving her, like an older brother, a guardian filled with love. Mira sat next to Titan, gently stroking him. In that moment, she felt an immense comfort. Titan wasn't just a dog, he was a solid protector, the unconditional love that she and Emily could rely on. "Thank you, Titan," Mira whispered, feeling peace in her heart. Titan lifted his head, his eyes shining with understanding, as if to answer, "I will always be here." Mira realized that nothing was more precious than the bond between her, Emily, and Titan. This relationship, though unspoken, was deep and complete. Titan had become a part of their family, an irreplaceable protector in every step of their journey. She knew that no matter what happened, Titan would always be there, like a friend who would never betray them. That feeling of safety and protection that Titan provided was what allowed Mira to remain strong, no matter how difficult the world outside became. A noise came from the back door in the middle of the night. Mira woke up, her heart tightening as she sensed something was wrong. It wasn't the wind, nor the usual sounds she had grown used to. It was the distinct sound of a door opening, quietly but unmistakably, as if someone was trying to enter the house without making a sound. Titan immediately picked up on what was happening. The dog's head snapped up, eyes sharp, focused on the door. Before Mira could react, Titan stood up, his body rigid, ears perked. Without hesitation, the dog charged toward the bedroom door, where the sound had come from. Mira didn't have time to speak. Titan had already positioned himself in front of her, protecting her with unyielding determination. When the door opened, a strange man stepped inside. The dim light in the room allowed Mira only a partial view of his face, but it was clear he was an intruder. The man didn't hesitate, seeming to have a clear plan as he entered the house of shadowy figures pulling strings behind the scenes, orchestrating events she couldn't fully understand. Titan had always been there to protect her from physical danger. But now, it felt like there was an even greater threat, one that lurked beneath the surface, hidden behind familiar faces. Mira stood in the doorway, her heart still pounding in her chest, as she watched the small drops of blood stain the floor. The intruder had gone, but the air in the room felt charged with something darker, something more menacing. The blood was a symbol of the danger that still hung over them, a reminder that the threat was far from over. Mira felt a chill settle over her spine as the weight of what had just happened sank in. Titan stood motionless beside her, still watching the door, his eyes sharp, vigilant. His role as a protector had been proven once again, but now Mira felt the weight of the hidden dangers surrounding her. She couldn't afford to ignore the signs any longer. There was something, someone, behind all of this. Her mind raced as she processed the situation. The intruder had come for something or someone, but they hadn't gotten what they wanted. Mira couldn't shake the feeling that they would be back. This wasn't the end, just another chapter in a much larger story that was unfolding in ways she couldn't yet see. Titan nudged her gently, as though reminding her to focus. Mira reached down and stroked his fur, grateful for his calm presence. He was still there, unwavering by her side, but the truth was, she couldn't stay safe behind this barrier of protection forever. She needed to find answers, to understand the full picture. Turning to the small bag left behind by the intruder, Mira slowly crouched down to examine it. She didn't know what she was expecting, but when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside were papers, documents, scattered and creased, written in a language she didn't recognize. Her heart raced as she realized these might be the answers she had been searching for. What could these papers mean? Were they linked to the conspiracy that had already claimed Ethan's life? As Mira carefully gathered the papers, she knew one thing for certain. This was no random act of violence. The pieces were falling into place, slowly but surely. Titan's fierce loyalty and the stranger's cryptic message were not isolated events. They were part of something bigger, and Mira had to figure out what that was. With a deep breath, she stood up, Titan still by her side. Her next steps were clear. She had to keep pushing forward. She couldn't afford to stop. Whatever lay ahead, whatever danger she and Emily faced, she would face it head on. With Titan at her side, Mira was ready to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. A web was silently closing in around her family. The signs had never been clearer. Everything wasn't an accident or a coincidence anymore. It was a conspiracy she had to face. Mira understood that this danger wasn't just coming from outside. It was also lurking within seemingly harmless relationships. She and her family were facing something much bigger, an unavoidable challenge that she couldn't ignore. When Mira's phone rang, she quickly answered without looking at the caller ID. Sarah Monroe's voice came through the line, instantly raising a wave of tension in Mira's chest. "Mira, I've just heard something. Someone is looking for the evidence that Ethan left behind," Sarah said, her voice laced with worry. "I don't know who it is, but I can sense that danger is closing in." Mira sank into a chair, her heart tightening. "Are you sure?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. Sarah's worry intensified. "I can't be clearer, Mira. There's a group of people searching for the documents Ethan hid, probably the ones related to Operation Blacksmith. And these people aren't just after the evidence. They'll do whatever it takes to keep the truth from coming out." Sarah's words hit Mira like a blow to the chest. She felt everything start to unravel in her mind. The connections surrounding Ethan, Frank's cryptic warnings, and the pieces from Ethan's journal now began to align. The threat wasn't just one intruder. It could be a large organization trying to bury the truth. The feeling was like a sharp blade slowly closing in on her family. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll act on this immediately," Mira said, her voice now firm with resolve. She couldn't stand still anymore. Every passing moment brought danger closer. Mira knew she had to act, not only to protect her family, but to ensure Ethan's memory wasn't erased. She hung up the phone, but she didn't feel any relief. The information Sarah had given her only increased her tension. Mira looked around the house, everything still quiet. But now, that silence felt suffocating, like a noose tightening around her. She could no longer hesitate. Everything had moved beyond her control. The unresolved secrets would continue to threaten her family, and she had to find a way to protect Emily and Titan. Mira stood up, her decision made. She would do whatever it took to protect her family, not just to survive this danger, but to uncover the truth Ethan had left behind. Every step she took now carried the weight of a psychological burden, knowing that each action could push her family deeper into danger. A wave of confusion enveloped Mira as she thought of Emily, her little girl asleep in her room. Emily was everything to her, the only reason Mira had left to keep going through these dark days. Titan, her loyal dog, was more than just a pet now. He was her most trusted companion, the only protector of their family. He had become even more vital than ever before. Mira knew that if she continued the investigation, her family would not be able to escape the danger. The people searching for evidence wouldn't stop. They wouldn't spare her or Emily. But if she stopped the investigation, everything Ethan had done, all the secrets he left behind, would be buried forever. She couldn't let Ethan's death be in vain, couldn't live in uncertainty and fear about what was being hidden. Mira felt like she was standing at a crossroads, where every choice she made carried profound consequences. She sat down, her hands resting on the table, and looked toward Titan, the dog lying quietly beside her. Titan's instinct, the protection he offered, was the only thing that gave her the strength to keep going. Titan never left her side, and she knew that in this journey he would always be her protector, guarding both her and Emily. Mira sighed, her decision made. She would continue the investigation, but with more caution, and find every way possible to protect her family along the way. She couldn't abandon the truth, and if danger approached, she wouldn't hesitate to face it, knowing Titan's unwavering protection was by her side. Each step brought her closer to the truth about Ethan's death, and although she knew the challenges ahead would be great, she couldn't back down. Mira looked toward Titan, his bright eyes reflecting his readiness to protect her family. Without words, Titan's presence gave Mira a deep sense of confidence. She wasn't alone in this journey. Every step, every decision she made would be guided by the love and loyalty of Titan. The sense of anxiety lingered, but Mira knew she couldn't stop. She had to face the dangers ahead, uncover all the secrets Ethan had tried to reveal. And as the threat grew larger, she would keep fighting, with Titan always by her side, not just as a protector, but as her most loyal companion in this journey to uncover the truth. The questions about Ethan's death had haunted her for so long, and she couldn't let them sink into silence. There was no other way but to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Mira decided to continue the investigation, despite the risks. Every time she thought of Emily, a strength rose within her, but at the same time, an unspoken fear began to cling to her. Her family's life could not be threatened like this forever. She had to find out who killed Ethan and bring the truth to light. The tension reached its peak when Mira decided to meet Captain John Clark, Ethan's old friend. Mira had heard about him from Ethan's journal entries, but now she truly understood the importance of having a conversation with John. She needed his help to learn more about what Ethan had discovered. Mira stood outside John's house, her heart pounding in her chest. John was a cautious man, not one to easily share information. But Mira knew he might be the only one who could help her get closer to the truth. When she knocked on the door, a wave of anxiety surged, but determination took over. She couldn't turn back now, couldn't give up when everything had already gone so far. John opened the door and looked at her with understanding in his eyes. "Mira," he said, "I know why you're here. Ethan left many things unsaid, but I can't give you all the answers." "Mira, you have to be careful," John said, his voice grave. "These people, the ones behind all of this, they're not just anyone. They've got connections everywhere, military, politics, even finance. They control everything from the shadows, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep their secrets safe. Don't think for a second that you and Emily are safe just because you're not part of this world. They'll target anyone who gets too close to the truth." Mira felt the weight of John's warning settle over her like a heavy cloak. The enormity of what he was saying was almost too much to bear. Ethan had died trying to expose something far bigger than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just a random act of violence. It was part of a larger, darker game. And now, Mira was caught in the middle of it, unable to turn back. "I know the stakes, John," Mira said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her chest. "I won't stop. I can't. I have to know the truth. For Ethan, for Emily, and for myself." John's eyes softened slightly, though the concern remained. "I understand. But be careful. You're not just digging into Ethan's past anymore, Mira. You're digging into a world that will do everything to stay hidden. They have eyes everywhere. If they sense you're getting too close, they won't hesitate to eliminate the threat." Mira nodded, her mind already turning over the next steps. The truth was within her grasp, But the danger was undeniable. Every decision now felt like it carried life or death consequences, not just for her, but for everyone she loved. Titan's steady presence beside her felt like a constant reminder that no matter what, she wasn't alone in this. "I'll be careful," Mira promised, her voice tinged with resolve. "But I can't let this go. I have to find out what happened to Ethan, and I have to make sure his death wasn't in vain." John's gaze hardened. "Then you're already on a path you can't turn back from. Be prepared for what's coming. You won't be able to do this alone, Mira. And remember, there are people out there who will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried." As Mira left John's house, she felt a strange mix of fear and determination. The pieces were falling into place, but the full picture was still far from clear. She wasn't sure what she would find next, but she knew she couldn't stop. Not now, not when she was this close to uncovering the truth. The car ride home was a blur. Mira's thoughts kept racing, bouncing between the looming dangers ahead and the fragile sense of safety she had in the present. Emily was safe, for now. Titan was by her side, loyal as always. But Mira couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The ominous presence of the people behind Ethan's death was closing in, and Mira couldn't ignore it any longer. As she arrived home, she stood in front of the door, taking a deep breath before entering. The house was quiet, too quiet. The feeling of being observed lingered, creeping over her skin like a cold breeze. She looked down at Titan, who was standing alert at the door. His eyes met hers, as if sensing her unease. She gave him a small, reassuring smile. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "Together." The night stretched on, but Mira knew that the journey she had started was far from over. There was no turning back now. She had to keep going, for Ethan, for Emily, and for the truth. Mira nodded, the weight of her decision heavy in her chest. But there was no other choice. She had to move forward, not just for the truth, but for the safety of the people she loved. "John," Mira began, her voice firm but tinged with worry, "I need your help. I can't do this alone. I know it's dangerous, but I can't stop now." John looked at Mira for a moment, his gaze betraying his concern. "Mira, I know. I understand. I know this investigation won't be easy, and I can't let you face it all by yourself." He sighed, as if he'd been thinking about his decision for a long time. "We'll do this together. But I need you to be careful. Things could get complicated very quickly." Mira felt a sense of relief, knowing that she wasn't alone in this fight. Having a companion, especially someone who understood Ethan and what he had done, made her feel more confident. But she also knew things wouldn't be easy from here on out. John and Mira quickly mapped out a detailed plan to track down more significant clues about Operation Blacksmith. They needed to go to the places where Ethan had uncovered evidence, locations that could hold crucial documents. Every step, every decision could bring them closer to the truth, but it would also lead to potential dangers. "We need to move fast," John said, his gaze sharp. "These people won't hesitate, and they'll do whatever it takes to stop us." Mira nodded, determination in her eyes. "I can't turn back, John. I'll find out the truth, and I need you by my side." The trust Mira had in John's companionship was something she had never considered before. Despite the danger now, she knew that with John by her side, they could face these challenges together. Their collaboration was more than just a professional relationship. It was a deep bond between people who had once been friends with Ethan, standing together to protect what he had fought for. Mira felt stronger, ready to face whatever was coming. The trust she had in John and Titan made her feel more confident than ever. She knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but if she didn't act now, she would never have another chance. The three of them, along with Titan, were heading to a remote area where Ethan had hidden crucial evidence about Operation Blacksmith. This was a place few knew about, an old storage facility in an abandoned area. Mira, John, and Titan moved carefully, knowing that every step they took could reveal their location to the enemy. Every shadow, every sound, could be a sign of an impending threat. Mira felt the tension rise in her chest. She couldn't afford to miss any sign, and she knew the enemy could be tracking their every move. They had to move quickly, but also with extreme caution. John remained silent, his eyes never leaving the surrounding darkness, while Titan continued to scan every shadow, his alertness absolute. As they drew closer to the hiding area, the tension became unbearable. Though no one seemed to be nearby, Mira sensed a strange presence. She couldn't explain it, but her instincts told her that something wasn't right was precise, each stride taking them further away from danger, but also leading them into the unknown. Titan's senses were sharp, and Mira trusted him completely. He was their guide, their protector, and now, more than ever, the strength of their bond was keeping them alive. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter behind them, but Mira didn't dare slow down. She focused entirely on Titan, his every movement, his every direction. As they weaved through the dense woods, Titan's eyes flickered back to check their progress, making sure they weren't being followed too closely. Mira's heart raced, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not when Emily was relying on her to stay strong. In the midst of the chaos, Mira's thoughts briefly flickered to Ethan, his journal, his warnings, his hopes that she would finish what he couldn't. This wasn't just about surviving the night. It was about uncovering the truth he had worked so hard to protect. Every step Mira took now wasn't just for her and Emily. It was for Ethan, for everything he had sacrificed. The trees thinned ahead, and Mira could see the faint outline of their destination, the storage area where Ethan had hidden the evidence. They were almost there, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them, just out of sight. She could almost hear the rush of footsteps closing in, but with Titan leading them, she kept moving forward. Finally, they reached the clearing that led to the entrance of the storage site. Titan stopped just short of the door, his body taut, eyes scanning every shadow. Mira was barely able to catch her breath, but she nodded at him, her trust in him unwavering. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was it. They were about to uncover the truth, and no matter what came next, they couldn't turn back. Mira stepped forward, her hand gripping the door handle. As she pushed it open, Titan was right behind her, a silent sentinel ready for anything. But Mira knew that she couldn't turn back. She had to move forward, not just for the truth, but for the safety of her family. "John," Mira began, her voice steady yet still carrying a hint of worry. "I need your help. I can't do this alone. I know it's dangerous, but I can't stop now." John looked at Mira for a moment, his eyes betraying his concern. "Mira, I know. I understand. I know this investigation won't be easy, and I can't let you face it all by yourself," he sighed, as if he had thought long and hard about his decision. "We'll do this together, but I need you to be careful. Things could get complicated very quickly." Mira felt a sense of relief, knowing she wasn't alone in this fight. Having someone by her side, especially someone who understood Ethan and what he had been through, gave her more confidence. But she also knew that things wouldn't be easy from here on out. John and Mira quickly mapped out a detailed plan to track down more significant clues about Operation Blacksmith. They needed to go to the places where Ethan had uncovered evidence, locations that could hold crucial documents. Every step, every decision could bring them closer to the truth, but it would also lead to potential dangers. "We need to move fast," John said, his gaze sharp. "These people won't hesitate, and they'll do whatever it takes to stop us." Mira nodded. determination in her eyes. "I can't turn back, John. I'll find out the truth. And I need you by my side." The trust Mira had in John's companionship was something she had never considered before. Despite the danger now, she knew that with John by her side, they could face these challenges together. Their collaboration was more than just a professional relationship. It was a deep bond between people who had once been friends with Ethan, standing together to protect what he had fought for. Mira felt stronger, ready to face whatever was coming. The trust she had in John and Titan made her feel more confident than ever. She knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but if she didn't act now, she would never have another chance. The three of them, along with Titan, were heading to a remote area where Ethan had hidden crucial evidence about Operation Blacksmith. This was a place few knew about, an old storage facility in an abandoned area. Mira, John, and Titan moved carefully, knowing that every step they took could reveal their location to the enemy. Every shadow, every sound could be a sign of an impending threat. Mira felt the tension rise in her chest. She couldn't afford to miss any sign, and she knew the enemy could be tracking their every move. They had to move quickly, but also with extreme caution. John remained silent, his eyes never leaving the surrounding darkness, while Titan continued to scan every shadow, his alertness absolute. As they drew closer to the hiding area, the tension became unbearable. Though no one seemed to be nearby, Mira sensed a strange presence. She couldn't explain it, but her instincts told her that something wasn't right had left behind. But the deeper she went, the more tangled the web of lies and deceit became. Frank's involvement in Operation Blacksmith was just the tip of the iceberg. Mira felt a growing sense of dread as she realized that this was no longer just about finding out who was responsible for Ethan's death. It was about exposing a powerful and dangerous network that had been operating in the shadows for years. As Mira pieced together the evidence, she knew that each step forward would make her a bigger target. She had already noticed the signs, the strange calls, the unmarked vehicles parked near her home, and the increased tension in Titan's behavior. Even the walls of her once safe home seemed to close in on her, whispering of threats she couldn't see but knew were there. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't let Ethan's death be swept under the rug, nor could she allow the dangerous people behind this network to continue their work unchecked. They had already silenced Ethan once, but Mira wasn't going to let them do it again. With each new discovery, Mira knew that the stakes were getting higher. Frank's past with Ethan, his secretive behavior, and his sudden reluctance to talk about what really happened, it all pointed to something much larger than she had initially thought. She was now caught in the middle of a high-stakes game with forces far beyond her control. But with Titan by her side, she felt a quiet strength growing inside her. They were in this together, and that was all that mattered. "Stay close, Titan," Mira whispered to her loyal companion, who had been her unwavering protector through it all. The dog's bright eyes met hers, full of understanding and readiness. Titan was more than just a dog. He was her partner in this fight for justice. And so, with one last look at the files in front of her, Mira set her mind on the path ahead. She knew the dangers were far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Ethan's story needed to be told, and no matter the risks, she was determined to uncover the truth. As Titan stood watch beside her, Mira knew that they would face the darkness together, whatever it took. The documents in Ethan's journal revealed that Frank knew about the international arms trafficking network Ethan had uncovered, and possibly Frank was involved in these dark activities. Mira sought out Ethan's old military friends, trying to dig up information about Frank. One of Ethan's friends revealed that Frank had attended several secret meetings where arms deals and military conspiracies were discussed. This new information made Mira reconsider everything she knew about Frank. Everything now seemed far from simple. The deeper Mira dug into the investigation, the more she saw Frank's close connection to the people behind the plot. Frank was not just an old friend, but a key figure in a much more dangerous network than she had imagined. The more she found, the more her suspicion of Frank grew. Every question she asked about Frank made her feel increasingly tense, as though Frank was hiding a huge secret that no one was meant to know. Mira sat silently, staring out the window, her thoughts swirling. She could feel the immense threat closing in, like a wolf lurking in the shadows. Mira knew she couldn't stop, but she also realized that if she kept digging deeper, her family could be in immediate danger. The truth was becoming clearer. But the secrets Frank and the people behind Ethan's death were hiding could destroy everything she was trying to protect. The tension in Mira grew stronger. She knew she was getting very close to the truth, but could she be strong enough to face the secrets that the people around her were trying to hide? There was no choice but to continue the investigation. But the closer she got to the truth, the more she knew that the danger would escalate, and the hidden enemies would stop at nothing to keep her from uncovering the truth. But at the same time, her anxiety grew, realizing that she had gone too far, and the confrontation with danger was no longer just about the strangers breaking in. The strange actions of those involved in the arms network were becoming more forceful. Mira noticed that the arms dealers were no longer hiding in the shadows. They had come out into the open, and threats were appearing everywhere. She started receiving phone calls from unknown numbers, noticing strange signs around the house, and even Titan started showing clear signs of tension. These people didn't just want to stop the investigation. They wanted to quietly erase any trace that could lead to the truth. Mira felt that her investigation was facing a greater danger than ever before. She wasn't just dealing with intruders from the outside, but also with threats from people she had once trusted. The relationships around her, from Frank Hayes to Ethan's old friends, had suddenly become murky, and Mira began to suspect that these people could be the ones behind it all. This made her feel uneasy, as she couldn't tell who was friend or foe anymore. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. Mira knew she had opened a door that might never close. The dangers were not just from the strangers lurking around, but also from the very people she had trusted. Mira could not turn back. She knew that if she wanted to protect her family and uncover the truth about Ethan's death, she had to face these dangers head-on. But as things became more complicated, she felt like she was stepping into a battle she was never prepared for. Mira had uncovered some crucial evidence in the documents Ethan had hidden. Mira looked at the names, a feeling of doubt rising within her. One of those names was Frank Hayes. Mira couldn't help but think that Frank was involved in what was going on. She started connecting the dots. The vague conversations Frank had had with Ethan before he died, the times Frank showed up unexpectedly during critical moments, all seemed like signs that he wasn't just a normal friend of Ethan. Frank's actions now made Mira even more suspicious of his connection to the weapons trafficking group. She realized that Frank could have been involved in the conspiracy for a long time and might have been the one who directly killed Ethan to prevent him from continuing his investigation. Mira looked at Ethan's documents again, no longer feeling fear, but determination. She couldn't stop now. She couldn't let the ones behind this escape punishment. The clues were clearer than ever, and now Mira had to follow through on what Ethan had started, regardless of the danger. She knew that not just her life, but also her family's safety depended on the next steps. As Mira flipped through Ethan's documents, she realized that what had once been a series of scattered notes now connected into a complete piece of evidence. An international weapons trafficking network, operating under the guise of legitimate organizations, protected by powerful figures. Falsified contracts, weapon shipments transported through diplomatic routes, and secret meetings held at locations beyond government control. Ethan had followed each lead, recording everything with meticulous detail. Mira understood that these documents weren't something that could simply be made public. They were dangerous. Too dangerous. They could bring down an entire system. She also realized that if Ethan had gone this far, his death wasn't just a suspicion. It was the truth. Those involved in the network would do anything to keep everything in the dark. She sat still, staring at the list of names Ethan had written down, some of whom were once considered teammates, friends. Now they stood out as links in a chain of crimes that had never been made public. Frank Hayes was among those names. Mira didn't want to believe it, but the documents didn't lie. Titan stood beside her, silent, but his gaze was fixed on her, as if sensing the weight bearing down on Mira. She gently stroked Titan's head, a wave of gratitude rising within her. In a world where everything could be betrayed, Titan's presence was the only thing she could truly rely on. Mira took a deep breath. She knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. The secrets could no longer be hidden, and the truth, no matter how dark, had to come to light. Each step she took now wasn't just an investigation, it was a battle for the survival of her family. The clues Mira had uncovered during the investigation were key milestones leading to the truth. But as she looked at the documents Ethan had left behind, looking at the names that had emerged, she couldn't shake the fear. If she exposed this evidence, someone would come and stop her. They wouldn't let her easily survive bringing these secrets to light. Mira knew that those involved in Operation Blacksmith were no ordinary criminals. They had power, influence, and would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. She looked at Titan, the dog sitting quietly beside her, his bright eyes staring intently at her. A strange sense of warmth and safety spread through Mira as she gazed into Titan's loyal eyes. She knew that the dog would always protect her and Emily. But protect them from what? What she had discovered was too dangerous to reveal, and her family would become a target for those who would never relinquish their power and interests. Mira thought of Emily, her young daughter peacefully sleeping in her room. If she exposed the truth, would Emily be safe? Would this revelation lead to even greater danger for her family? She couldn't let that happen. But if she stayed silent, could she live with herself? Ethan's death couldn't be forgotten like that. She couldn't let those who killed him continue to harm others. And if she did nothing, could she be at peace knowing she had done the right thing? The anxiety and torment consumed Mira. Each question gnawed at her. Was the truth worth the danger she and her family would face? She couldn't help but think of what Ethan had done. He had risked his life to uncover the truth, but now she was faced with the question of whether she was strong enough to continue the path he had chosen. Mira hung her head in her hands, feeling the exhaustion in every muscle. But when she looked up, Titan's gaze made her feel less alone. She had a choice, and no matter the danger, she couldn't give up the truth. Mira stood up, looking out the window, where darkness covered everything. She felt a new determination rise within her. The truth would be revealed, and although her family would face difficult challenges, she would not stop. Because if she didn't stand up, who would? "We will do this," Mira whispered to Titan, her heart full of resolve. "We will do what's right." Mira looked into Titan's eyes, feeling his resilience and unwavering loyalty. But as the words left her lips, a wave of emotion surged within her, feelings she couldn't easily explain. She loved her family, loved Emily, and nothing mattered more than protecting them from all danger. Yet, facing the truth she had uncovered, the inner conflict began to torment her. If she continued with the investigation, was she putting her family in even greater danger? The people behind Operation Blacksmith were not ones to let obstacles stand in their way. Mira feared she might lose everything she loved just for one wrong decision. Every time she thought of Emily, the image of her sleeping peacefully made Mira's heart ache. She didn't want anything to happen to her daughter, but the truth couldn't be hidden forever. She knew that if she did nothing, if she kept silent, Ethan's death would remain an unsolved mystery, and her family would live in deception. She couldn't live like that. Ethan didn't want her to forget, didn't want her to live in the dark. But did she have the strength to face those dangerous people? She couldn't help but ask herself. They wouldn't spare her, wouldn't spare anyone who stood in their way. But Mira understood that if she didn't stand up, if she didn't do the right thing, she would have to live with guilt for the rest of her life. How could she look Emily in the eyes without feeling regret if she gave up this fight? Mira nodded, her resolve hardening as the weight of the situation settled upon her. But she couldn't stop now. She had to press on, not just for the truth, but for the safety of her family. Looking at Titan, her loyal dog, she whispered, "We'll do this, Titan." Titan sat beside her, his eyes unwavering, ready to stand guard as always. Mira felt a deep sense of reassurance wash over her. With Titan at her side, she was no longer afraid. The truth would come out, no matter the cost. She turned to face the path ahead, determination burning in her chest. Mira knew that exposing the truth about Ethan's death would not be easy, but staying silent would only perpetuate the lies. With a deep breath, she steeled herself for what was to come. Together with John and Titan, Mira moved forward, heading to a remote area where Ethan had hidden key evidence about Operation Blacksmith. The journey was fraught with danger, but Mira was resolute. She had no choice but to uncover the truth. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision, every step, could bring them closer to the dark forces behind Ethan's death. They navigated through the damp, abandoned warehouses and forgotten corners, each step bringing them closer to the answers they sought. When they finally reached a small room, Mira's heart raced as she unlocked the cabinet containing Ethan's carefully hidden documents. Inside were contracts, emails, and other records detailing illegal arms shipments. The evidence was undeniable. As Mira sifted through the papers, she found a report detailing the weapons shipments to conflict zones. Her hands trembled as she read the names of high-ranking officials involved in the illicit deals. These were powerful people with the capacity to destroy entire systems, and they wouldn't let Mira or John expose their secrets so easily. One name stood out, Frank Hayes. Frank, Ethan's close friend, was now connected to these shady dealings. Mira's suspicions grew stronger. Could Frank have been involved in the conspiracy? The question lingered in her mind, gnawing at her. "Mira, we need to go now," John said, snapping her out of her thoughts. "I have a feeling we don't have much time left." Mira looked at him, heart pounding, knowing that their time was running out. The danger was escalating, and their investigation had already put them in the crosshairs of those who would do anything to keep their secrets hidden. The stranger's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation, his expression cold and calculated. Mira could feel the weight of his gaze, as if he was evaluating the very core of her resolve. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The air between them was thick with tension, the quiet before the storm. "We will see about that," the man said with a hint of a sneer. Then he motioned subtly to the shadows behind him. Mira's heart skipped a beat as she realized they weren't alone. More figures stepped forward, emerging from the darkness, their movements deliberate and threatening. Titan growled, the deep rumble of his voice resonating in the silence. Mira's hand instinctively reached for her own weapon, But she knew it wasn't just the guns that would save them. It was the strength of their resolve, their will to fight for the truth. John shifted his stance, positioning himself protectively in front of Mira and Emily. Titan, sensing the increasing danger, lunged forward, a flash of speed and power. The stranger raised an eyebrow but remained unfazed, as if he had anticipated Titan's response. He raised a hand, signaling the others to hold their ground. "You're out of your depth," the man said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "You think you can uncover what we've worked so hard to hide? You don't even know the full extent of the power you're up against." Mira tightened her grip on her weapon, her voice steady but sharp. "We know enough, and we're not backing down. This ends now." The man's eyes flickered, a mix of irritation and disbelief crossing his face. He wasn't used to being confronted like this. He had underestimated them, underestimated Mira's resolve. Without warning, he stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Mira's. "Then you're already too late." The tension in the air escalated. Mira could see the men in the shadows shifting, waiting for a signal. Her mind raced, calculating the risk, the next move. She had one shot at this. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. "Get ready," Mira whispered to John, her eyes never leaving the man in front of her. "On my mark." Titan was already moving, a blur of muscle and speed as he advanced toward the stranger, his teeth bared, his growl escalating. The man's expression remained unchanged, but Mira saw the slight shift in his posture, a sign that he was no longer as certain of the outcome as he had been moments before. "Mark," Mira whispered. In that split second, everything happened at once. Titan lunged, and the sound of a gunshot shattered the silence. The world seemed to stop for a moment. The tension reached its peak as the stranger reached into his coat, drawing a gun. But before he could react, Titan lunged forward with a powerful roar, immediately drawing the man's attention. The stranger didn't have time to react as Titan closed in, using his strength to force him back, causing him to stumble. Mira could hardly catch her breath. Titan had protected them once again, and nothing could shake her resolve. In that moment, Mira knew the fight wasn't over. The enemies were still out there, and she had to continue seeking the truth, no matter the danger they faced. She looked at Titan, the dog's eyes still bright, full of determination and loyalty, always ready to protect her and Emily. The sense of safety Titan gave her was the only motivation that kept Mira going through these trying times. Mira knew that this was no longer just a typical investigation. She had dragged secrets out of the shadows, but the closer the truth came, the more exhausted and stressed she felt. The evidence she had collected was not just about Ethan's life. It was about those with power and influence across the globe. The international arms dealers weren't ordinary criminals. They were powerful figures capable of manipulating military and political policies. Mira wondered if she had the strength to face these people. Every step she took, every decision she made, could be the last for her family. But that couldn't stop her. She had gone too deep into this investigation, and she couldn't stop now. She couldn't let Ethan's sacrifice be forgotten. "We can't turn back," Mira whispered to herself. "This is too big, and I can't give up." She pulled herself together, preparing for what would come next. The evidence in her hands was enough to make a crucial decision. The truth would be exposed, even if it meant facing the forces behind these conspiracies. Mira felt a new strength rising within her. No more fear, no more doubt. She would bring the truth to light, despite the opposition from those in power. "We have to keep going," Mira said to Titan, and the dog, with a loyal gaze, nodded as if understanding the weight of her words. Titan's bright eyes were the greatest encouragement in this journey, no matter the challenges or dangers she had to face. Looking into those eyes, Mira felt a solid strength. That was why she knew she couldn't stop, even though the road ahead was long and full of obstacles. Looking at Emily, still asleep in her crib, Mira couldn't help but feel a quiet ache in her heart. She had gone too far, allowed herself to sink deep into the secrets Ethan had left behind. She could feel Ethan's sacrifice in every step, in every clue she uncovered. His death couldn't be in vain. And as everything slowly unraveled, she knew she had to keep going, even though the cost of the truth could be unpredictable. Mira didn't want to say goodbye to the past, but she knew that if she couldn't face the truth, she would live in the dark forever. She would never be able to protect her family. And that was something she couldn't accept. But because of that, she couldn't forget what had been lost. Every decision, every choice she made came with an invisible debt she had to pay. Mira looked back at the long road they had traveled, from the early days when Ethan was still alive to the moments of solitude in her loss. But now, everything had changed. Not only her, but also Emily and Titan had become fighters in this journey. They were family, the ones who had stood by her through everything, no matter the dangers they faced. Mira knew she couldn't go back, couldn't live in the memories of the past anymore. The decisions she had to make didn't just affect her, but also everything she loved. She looked at Titan, as if seeking confirmation from the dog. Titan didn't need words. He always knew what she needed. And at that moment, Mira knew, no matter how many challenges lay ahead, she would never be alone. Titan had become an irreplaceable part of her life, from the happy days with Ethan to the painful moments when she had to face loss alone. She remembered the moments when her family was still whole. Ethan, with his warm smile and how he always protected her, always kept their family safe. The cozy dinners, Emily's laughter, those had become memories that could never be erased from Mira's mind. She remembered the mornings when Ethan would wake up early to take care of Titan, training the dog carefully like a teammate. She had seen the love in every action of his, and those moments had been etched deep into her heart. Ethan's sacrifice, not only in his work, but in his love for the family, made Mira reflect. He had fought not only for the country, but for his family. She remembered the times when he promised to always protect her and Emily, and the Titan would always be there with them as an invisible shield. Back then, Mira could only smile, but now those words echoed in her mind like a powerful reminder. The sense of loss had never subsided, but looking at Titan, she understood that love never truly fades. Although Ethan was gone, his love for the family remained through Titan, through the memories he left behind. Mira realized that Ethan's sacrifice wasn't just a statement, but actions he had proven throughout his life. She took a deep breath, and in that moment, Mira felt peace wash over her. Her family had gone through tremendous losses, but Ethan's love and sacrifice still served as the guiding light for her to continue life. No matter the challenges ahead, Mira understood that that unconditional love would always lead her, and her family would never lack protection, whether from Titan or the memories Ethan had left behind. Mira felt an unusual sense of tranquility, a feeling of completion, as if everything in her life had a purpose. Ethan's death, the losses, the pain, all had brought her here, a stronger mother, a woman ready to face the truth, and a united family standing together. She looked at Titan, the loyal companion of her family, and then at Emily, her little daughter smiling in her sleep. No matter how the world changed, Mira knew that the most precious things in life would never disappear. The sacrifice and love Ethan had left had nurtured her and her family all this time. This feeling, this sense of completion, was the final gift Ethan had given her. She knew they would continue to live, continue to protect each other, no matter what difficulties lay ahead. And in that moment, Mira felt peace in her heart, even though she knew the journey was still long. She looked at Emily, the little girl who had matured so much since Ethan passed away, and at Titan, the loyal companion who was always by their side, like an unshakable shield of protection. Even though the world around them was still full of challenges, a part of her knew they had survived the worst. They had stepped out of the darkness, and now it was time to look toward the light, even if the road ahead could be difficult. Their new life began in a small town where no one knew about Mira and her family's past. It was a fresh start, an opportunity to rebuild everything from the ground up. Mira found a new job, one that was gentler, without the threats of dark conspiracies hanging over her. Emily, now attending school, made new friends and slowly found joy in life again. But no matter where they were, Titan's protection and love were always with them. The dog was not just a companion, but an indispensable part of the family. Mira felt the peace in every passing day. She no longer had to worry about the shadows of the past, about threatening calls, or the dangerous people lurking in the shadows. Instead, she lived with hope, with a brighter future ahead. Although she could never forget what had happened, Mira understood that life continued, and she could rebuild from what she had lost. Every morning, Mira, Emily, and Titan would stroll through the small garden behind their new home. Each step, each laugh, was a moment she knew she was on the right path. Emily still asked about her father, about Ethan, and Mira could only smile, hugging her daughter. She knew the memories of Ethan would always live in their hearts, but now they could look forward instead of lingering in the past. Titan was always by their side, his eyes full of love and protection. That priceless protection was felt not only through Titan's actions, but also through the love the dog showed for Mira and Emily. The difficulties of the past couldn't bring them down. They stood strong, moving forward because of the love and protection their family shared. The new life was not an end, but a new beginning. A brighter beginning, where Mira could rebuild what had been lost, where Emily could find new joys, and where Titan would always be the loyal protector, ready to face any challenge. Even though there were still unanswered questions, Mira knew her family would overcome everything, because their love and sacrifice would always be the undefeatable strength, protecting them every step of the way. And this was the new beginning. The walls once tied to painful memories now seemed like a safe place, a space for her family to restore what had been lost. Every day that passed, she felt the peace slowly return to her life. Mira no longer had to worry about the threats from the past. No more anonymous calls, no more shadows from Operation Blacksmith, or the people trying to conceal the truth. Instead, their lives gradually settled into a new rhythm. Emily laughed and played as she ran around the garden, and Titan was always beside her, keeping watch and guarding. Mira knew that no matter how life changed, the love and protection of her family would never change. Day by day, they began to rebuild from the simplest things. Mira found a new job, a lighter and more stable one, with no more stress or pressure. She no longer felt the rush like before, always worrying about the dangers around her. Every morning Mira woke up. With a sense of peace, Mira watched Emily wake up and joyfully run around, while Titan, as usual, was always by her side. Mira began to believe that good things could happen again. She no longer had to face the shadows of the past. Instead, new light was illuminating the path ahead. Life had changed, but not in the way she feared. It was changing for the better. She knew she would never forget Ethan, but now Mira could smile and continue living, continue loving, because her family deserved this happiness. Hope for the future was no longer a distant thought. It was the present, the peaceful moments that Mira and her family were enjoying every day. She couldn't change the past, but she could create a better future. And that was what Mira would continue to do, not just for herself, but for Emily and Titan, those who had always been by her side throughout this challenging journey. Mira knew that her family was her endless source of strength. Every step, every decision, she always remembered that love and protection would never be lacking. Although life had taken so much, the love and sacrifice that she and her family had experienced had created unbreakable bonds. Mira understood that life could change unexpectedly, but the deep values of love and family would always be the guiding light for them. Mira looked at Titan, her loyal companion always by her side, then at Emily, her daughter smiling happily in her arms. In these peaceful moments, Mira felt grounded. She couldn't change the past, but she could create a new future, a new story, a story of hope, of starting anew, and she would never give up on that path. Even though life sometimes leads us to difficult crossroads, loyal companions will always be there, helping us stand strong and overcome. The story of Titan is a testament to the unconditional love and powerful protection we can find in precious relationships. In each of our journeys, no matter what challenges arise, perseverance and sacrifice will help us overcome it all. We want to hear your story. Where are you on your journey? What challenges have you faced? And what motivation have you found to keep going? Share your story with us so we can find strength and connection together in these challenging journeys. Amid the pouring rain, a German shepherd named Rex stood unwavering in the middle of the road, blocking the way. His fur drenched, his resolve unbroken. Rex wasn't just protecting his friend with strength, he was driven by something deeper: loyalty and unconditional love. With each step they faced the hardest of challenges, but Rex led them forward, determined. The moment of truth came, and Rex didn't hesitate. He was more than just a dog. He was a hero. Would Thomas survive? Or was this the end? Only time would reveal the depth of Rex's sacrifice. The rain was pouring relentlessly at Sunset Ridge. The drops fell heavy and fast, thick as curtains, blocking everything in front of them. The entire town seemed swallowed by a blanket of white mist. Sarah and Jake were in the ambulance, speeding through the slippery streets, their mission urgent. They had received an emergency call. A patient had suffered a stroke at Riverside Avenue. Time was everything. The wheels spun steadily across the wet streets, the ambulance's headlights cutting through the thick rain, lighting up the puddles and darkened homes. There was a sense of urgency in the air, palpable even without words. Both Sarah and Jake could feel the pressure mounting. Neither said much, but they both knew. Every second mattered. "Hurry, Jake," Sarah urged, her voice tight with tension. "We can't afford to waste any time." Jake nodded, his eyes glued to the road ahead. The rain blurred the windshield, forcing him to wipe it away repeatedly. Despite the fog that surrounded them, their resolve was as clear as the beams of the headlights. "You think we'll make it?" Sarah asked, her eyes still fixed on the road, hands gripping the steering wheel. Jake didn't answer immediately. His focus remained on maneuvering the slippery roads. There was a brief hesitation in his gaze, but then he said, "Let's hope so. But all we can do is give it our best." The road ahead grew more treacherous, almost like a mirror under the pouring rain. Sarah felt the weight of it all in her chest as she thought about the patient waiting for them. The sense of duty was not just a task, it was a responsibility they both had to carry. "It feels like we're racing against time," Sarah whispered, her eyes dark with worry. Jake glanced at her, still intent on the road. "We've done this 1,000 times, Sarah. We'll get there." Nothing but the sound of the pounding rain and the hum of the ambulance cutting through the empty street. They didn't speak much more, each of them lost in their thoughts as the darkness of the night surrounded them. The tension hung in the air, but in the stillness of the night, it was almost as if time itself had slowed down, only the rain offering some comfort. Still, both Sarah and Jake knew they couldn't stop. Every second, every minute counted. The ambulance lights cut through the thick, dark rain, and in that moment, nothing mattered but the mission: to save a life. Sarah and Jake both knew that ahead of them lay life or death. Yet they didn't hesitate. They kept moving forward. And then, out of nowhere, they saw it. A large figure, standing still in the middle of the road. Rex, the German shepherd, stood tall, undaunted by the pouring rain or the sharp, biting wind. He didn't move, his eyes blazing, locked on the approaching ambulance. Under the headlights, Rex's silhouette was clear, as if he was waiting for someone. Both Sarah and Jake froze. A dog, standing in the middle of the road in this storm, not running away in fear like any other animal would. He wasn't panicking or running. It felt off. Jake slowed the ambulance, his gaze never leaving the dog. Rex didn't move. He was still, as if with purpose. "That's strange," Sarah said, her eyes glued to Rex. "Why is he just standing there?" Jake furrowed his brow. "Probably a stray, but I don't know. Something feels off." After a few seconds of silence, Sarah made a decision. She turned to Jake, her mind made up. "Let's stop. Maybe he needs help." They both opened the doors and stepped out into the heavy rain. The chill hit them immediately, but what caught Sarah's attention wasn't the cold. It was the dog. Rex was standing there, unmoving, his eyes burning with an unwavering, silent resolve. He was still, like he was protecting something. Sarah looked into Rex's eyes. An odd feeling washed over her. She felt like this wasn't just any dog. Something inside her urged her that this wasn't a coincidence. "Maybe we should follow him," she said, her voice quiet but firm, her eyes never leaving Rex. Jake didn't seem completely sure, but seeing the determination in Sarah's eyes, he knew he had no choice but to follow her. "If you think so, let's go." With measured steps, Rex began to move, heading toward the forest. His legs were steady, calm, no rush. He didn't turn around, but it was clear he was leading the way. Neither Sarah nor Jake knew where they were headed, but deep down, they both felt something strange. They couldn't stop. They had to follow. Sarah felt a sense of purpose well up inside her as she watched Rex guide them. She didn't know why she trusted this dog so completely, but something in Rex's eyes made her certain this was the path they needed to take. "What now?" Jake asked, following closely behind Sarah. "We follow him," Sarah replied, her voice gentle but determined. "I feel like he's taking us somewhere important." The three of them, Rex, Sarah, and Jake, continued into the forest. The rain kept pouring, but no one cared anymore. In that moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was the journey. And this journey wasn't just about saving one life. It was a path leading to new discoveries, to secrets, yet to be uncovered. Rex never turned back. With every step, he walked with a purpose. Each stride was certain, as though he knew every twist and turn of the dark forest ahead. Sarah and Jake followed, the tension in the air thick. Every step they took seemed to lead them deeper into a world that felt strange and dangerous. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Thomas. She wondered if they would make it in time, if he was still alive, or if it was already too late. "Where are we going, Sarah?" Jake asked, his eyes still fixed ahead. His uncertainty lingered, but as he looked at Sarah, he could feel her confidence. Even if he didn't understand why a dog was leading them, he knew he had to trust her. Sarah didn't respond right away. She felt a slight hesitation, but she couldn't let fear take hold. She knew they had to keep going, had to trust Rex. The strange trust she felt in this dog grew stronger with every step. Something in Rex's eyes told her this wasn't a coincidence. This dog knew what he was doing, and they just needed to follow. The trees around them grew denser, the darkness of the forest wrapping around them. With every step, they moved deeper into the woods, where towering trees stretched high above, blocking out the sky. The only sounds were Rex's paws on the ground and their breathing in the still night. The rain fell, but it didn't ease the tension inside Sarah. With every step Rex took, it felt like he was giving them the strength they needed. Slowly, Sarah began to trust him more. Jake remained quiet, his eyes locked on the path ahead. He felt something wasn't right, but he couldn't deny that Rex was leading them down the right path. "Do you think Thomas is still alive?" Jake asked, his voice hesitant. But looking into Sarah's determined eyes, he knew that she was confident. Sarah looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "We'll make it. I can feel it. Rex is taking us there. I trust him." Her voice was soft but firm, as if reminding herself that they couldn't stop, even though everything still felt uncertain. The three of them continued, and in the quiet, they could hear Rex's paws ahead of them, calm and unhurried, yet filled with certainty. No one said anything more, but inside Sarah and Jake, the anticipation and anxiety grew with every passing moment. They didn't know if Thomas was still alive, but they knew they couldn't stop. They couldn't give up. With every step, the forest seemed more mysterious, and unspoken questions began to rise in Sarah's mind. Had Rex sensed something they couldn't see? Was he leading them to the right place at the right time? Could they save Thomas? The open-ended conclusion of this chapter builds the tension and curiosity, leaving the reader unable to look away. Sarah, Jake, and Rex are heading into the unknown, where nothing is certain except their determination. They don't know what they will face, but they keep moving forward, trusting Rex, hoping that Thomas is still alive. The dark forest seemed to swallow them whole. Sarah and Jake walked behind Rex, the tension in the air thick. Each step they took felt like they were entering a different world, where everything was shrouded in mystery and danger. Sarah couldn't shake the worry gnawing at her about Thomas. She wondered if they would make it in time, if he was still alive, or if it was already too late. "Where are we going, Sarah?" Jake asked, his eyes still locked on the path ahead. He couldn't shake the unease, the feeling that something wasn't quite right. But when he looked at Sarah, the determination in her eyes reassured him. Even though he still didn't understand why a dog was leading them, his trust in her made him follow. Sarah didn't answer immediately. A small hesitation lingered, but she couldn't let fear control her. She knew they had to keep going, had to trust Rex. That strange feeling of trust in the dog only grew stronger with every step. Something in Rex's eyes told her this wasn't a coincidence. This dog knew what he was doing, and they just needed to follow. The trees around them grew thicker, the darkness of the forest wrapping tighter around them. With each step, they ventured deeper, where towering ancient trees reached high, blocking out the sky. The only sounds were Rex's steady paws on the damp earth and the faint sound of their breathing in the silence of the night. The rain kept falling, but it didn't ease the weight of Sarah's anxiety. Every step Rex took seemed to ground them, and Sarah began to believe in him more with each stride. Jake stayed silent, his eyes still glued to the dim path ahead. He felt like something wasn't right, but he couldn't deny that Rex was guiding them on the right path. "Do you think Thomas is still alive?" Jake asked, his voice hesitant, unsure. But looking into Sarah's eyes, full of resolve, he felt the confidence radiating from her. Sarah looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "We'll make it. I can feel it. Rex is taking us there. I trust him." Her voice was calm but resolute, as if reminding herself that they couldn't stop, even when everything felt uncertain. The three of them continued, moving in silence, listening to the sound of Rex's paws ahead, not rushing, not hurrying, but with a quiet certainty in each step. No one said anything more, but inside Sarah and Jake, the tension and anticipation only grew with every passing moment. They didn't know if Thomas was still alive, but they knew they couldn't stop. They couldn't give up. With each step, the forest grew even more mysterious, and unspoken questions began to surface in Sarah's mind. Had Rex sensed something they couldn't see? Was he leading them to the right place, at the right time? Could they save Thomas before it was too late? The open-ended conclusion of this chapter leaves the reader hanging, full of curiosity and tension. Sarah, Jake, and Rex were moving into the unknown, where nothing was certain except their determination. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they kept moving forward, trusting in Rex, and hoping Thomas was still alive. And when Thomas first met Rex, it wasn't a meeting filled with happiness. It wasn't a picture of peace, not in the slightest. In fact, it was heartbreaking. Rex, the German Shepherd, was no longer the strong, joyful dog he once was. He lay motionless on the ground, weak and battered, his body covered in deep, painful cuts. His fur was torn, revealing bruises and wounds from a brutal beating. Thomas arrived at the scene after receiving a report from the rescue team about an animal abuse case. He had seen many like it before, but when he neared the area where Rex was found, he felt a strange connection to the dog. In his mind, the image of his son, Michael, who had died in the war, flashed before him. Rex, in a way, was a reflection of Michael. Both had suffered. Both had endured pain and loss, just like Thomas. The dog didn't resist or bark. It just lay there, as if it had accepted the cruel fate that the gang had imposed on it. Thomas could feel the dog's pain, like an old friend he had never met. When he looked into Rex's eyes, he saw deep despair, but also something stronger, a will to live. As he approached, Thomas's heart sank as he took in the sight of Rex's condition. But he knew this was his chance to do something. Anything. "We're going to take care of you," Thomas whispered, not to anyone else, but to himself. He wasn't sure if he had the strength to help this dog, but one thing was clear in his heart. Rex would not face death alone. The rescue team rushed Rex to the hospital, but Thomas couldn't take his eyes off the dog. Within just a few days of care, Thomas began to see changes. Though still weak, Rex looked at him with an odd trust. Thomas realized that while Rex couldn't speak, he understood everything, every pain, every loss. Rex, like Thomas, had lost so much, and maybe, just maybe, they could find salvation through each other. After much thought, Thomas made the decision to adopt Rex. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The dog was injured, needed medication, special care, and most importantly, time to heal. But to Thomas, this was not just about helping Rex. It was a chance to save himself. Their relationship began not just as the rescue of a dog, but as the saving of a man. Rex was not just a rescue dog. He was the only companion Thomas could trust with his heart. In the following days, as he watched Rex recover, Thomas felt a subtle shift inside himself. Rex became the only friend Thomas had, his mental protector in ways no one else could be. With Rex's unwavering loyalty, Thomas began to find a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Every morning, when Thomas woke up, Rex was there beside the bed, his bright eyes fixed on him, as if waiting for something. Thomas couldn't remember ever feeling this kind of bond before. The long, lonely days without Michael had taken so much of his faith in life. But now, with Rex's presence, Thomas began to realize that despite the uncertainties of the world, there were still beautiful things to be found. Rex didn't need to say a word, but his presence alone was enough to comfort Thomas. Every time he looked into Rex's steadfast eyes, he felt reassured. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was a friend, a companion. Rex wasn't just a dog. He had become part of the family, a reliable companion Thomas never imagined he could find. As Rex began to fully recover, their bond grew deeper than ever. The dog didn't just help him through the physical pain. Rex was the emotional anchor Thomas had never known he needed. Slowly, Thomas began to realize that Rex's presence wasn't just about helping him get through the grief. It was a lifeline that gave him a reason to keep going, even in the darkest moments. At night, Thomas would sit beside Rex, gently petting the dog's back. Every small gesture seemed to be a reminder that he wasn't alone. Rex never left his side, and in return, Thomas couldn't imagine life without him. This dog had changed his entire world, bringing comfort he never knew would come. One morning, as they walked through the forest like they always did, Thomas felt something new, a strange sense of peace. The dog beside him wasn't just a companion anymore. Rex was the friend who had saved him, the one who had pulled him out of the darkness of loss. Rex was the friend who never judged, always by his side. And Thomas realized that in this dog, he had found a friend he could never replace. The two of them began their journey again. They weren't in a rush, no words were exchanged, just the sound of Rex's paws echoing in the stillness. Thomas felt calm with every step they took. The discomfort and fatigue from the tightness in his chest faded slowly as he walked alongside Rex. Rex always led the way, sometimes slowing down to check his surroundings, sometimes quickening his pace, establishing a steady rhythm for Thomas. The safety Rex offered made Thomas feel as though the dog could protect him from anything. Rex's unwavering persistence brought stability to Thomas that he never thought possible. As they passed through the winding forest paths, Thomas realized that these walks didn't just help him clear his mind, they were precious moments to connect with Rex. They didn't speak much, but the presence of Rex spoke volumes. There was nothing to fear, nothing to worry about, not with Rex at his side. Every step Rex took was a lesson in perseverance. The dog never gave up, never turned back, no matter how tough the path ahead. And with every step, Thomas learned to face his own pain. He was learning to let go of the memories of Michael, to live with the loss, and most importantly, to love and trust again. Day after day, Thomas and Rex shared these walks. They were simple moments, but they carried great meaning. Rex wasn't just a rescue dog. He was a true friend, one who was willing to face any challenge, to walk beside Thomas every step of the way. These walks, though silent, were filled with understanding and connection that only a loyal companion like Rex could provide. And with each step, Thomas gradually found peace within himself. He felt the help Rex offered, the healing that was taking place. He no longer felt so alone. He hadn't completely healed from losing Michael, but Rex's presence taught him that hope still existed. Sometimes, all it took was trusting in something bigger than himself to find balance again. This dog had become more than just a companion. Rex had become his guide back to life. Rex had become more than just a dog. He was Thomas's rock, his unwavering protector. Those walks, which once seemed so simple, held a power Thomas hadn't expected. With every step Rex took, he didn't just lead the way, he also gave Thomas strength. This dog, with his endless patience, never rushed, never grew tired. When Thomas felt weary, Rex was always there, walking beside him, listening, sharing each step. In those tough moments when Thomas felt like he couldn't go on, Rex reminded him of the strength that lived inside. Each time Thomas looked into Rex's shining eyes, he felt warmth and steadiness. It wasn't just the gaze of a dog, It was the gaze of a true friend, one who had never abandoned him, even in the darkest times. Their bond deepened. At first, Thomas had only seen Rex as a companion on those walks, but over time, Rex became an irreplaceable part of his life. This dog had helped him face the wounds in his heart, the pain he'd never dared to confront. Rex had opened him up, helping him slowly rediscover faith in life. The foggy mornings in the forest became something special between them. The quiet stillness, the only sound being Rex's paws and Thomas's breath, made all his worries and tension slowly dissolve. Neither of them had to speak. They understood each other. Rex understood Thomas's pain, and Thomas knew he could lean on Rex to get through it all. As the days passed, Thomas realized that his relationship with Rex had become a cornerstone of his life. Rex wasn't just a rescue dog anymore. He was a kindred spirit, helping him find peace and stability in a world full of challenges. Rex had changed the way Thomas viewed everything. With Rex by his side, Thomas no longer felt so lost. He had learned how to face the storms inside himself without fear. What had once been simple walks now became a healing journey. Every step with Rex felt like a step toward recovery. Thomas knew, no matter what the future held, he would never be alone. Rex would always be there, his silent protector, his true friend. Everything seemed calm. The world around them was quiet, with only Rex's footsteps echoing in the stillness of the forest. But then, without warning, a sharp pain in Thomas's chest made him stop. It felt like an invisible hand had grabbed his heart, tightening it, making it hard to breathe. The world around him began to blur. His body seemed to lose all its strength, his legs unsteady, and he had to lean against a nearby tree to keep his balance. Rex immediately noticed the change. Without a word, the dog turned and moved toward Thomas, eyes filled with concern. Rex could sense the difference, the weakness in Thomas, and without hesitation, the dog rushed over to him. Rex stood next to Thomas, careful and patient, not leaving his side in this moment. The dog lowered his body, gently nudging Thomas with his nose, as if to say, "You're not alone." Thomas's vision blurred, but in that moment, he felt Rex's steady presence beside him. Rex didn't need words, but in that instant, Thomas felt a sense of strength and reassurance. The dog didn't speak, but his presence said everything. Rex was there, steady, unshaken, just as he had been all along. In that moment, Thomas understood something deeper. Rex wasn't just his companion. He was the one who kept him grounded, who gave him the strength to face the toughest battles. And as the rain continued to fall softly around them, the bond between Thomas and Rex grew even more unbreakable. With Rex by his side, Thomas didn't feel alone. The dog wasn't just a companion. He was a protector, his steady presence the strength Thomas didn't know he needed. Rex had become the emotional anchor, the silent support Thomas had been yearning for. When Thomas managed to catch his breath and regain a little strength, Rex remained by his side, ever watchful. This dog, with the unwavering determination in his eyes, never left, even in the hardest of times. Thomas realized that, though his body wasn't as strong as it once was, with Rex, he still had an invisible strength. Rex had taught him that nothing was insurmountable when you had a friend beside you. Thomas understood that Rex's presence wasn't just helping him through the physical pain. It was also helping him confront his deepest fears. He didn't feel alone anymore. In that moment, he realized that, despite once believing he didn't need anyone, Rex had become an irreplaceable part of his life. Thomas began to notice the subtle changes in his body. The chest pains, though not as severe as before, still left him feeling tired and uneasy. Sleepless nights, shortness of breath, and waking up in a daze, everything seemed to point to one thing: his health was deteriorating. But Thomas didn't want to face the truth. He'd endured so much already, losing Michael, losing a part of himself. He didn't want to admit he was growing weaker, nor did he want to be a burden to those around him. Eleanor, Thomas's wife, began noticing the changes in his behavior. While Thomas still tried to maintain a strong front, his tired eyes, the exhaustion in his subtle movements, couldn't escape Eleanor's watchful eyes. She worried, but she didn't dare address his health directly, knowing he didn't want anyone to worry about him. But one day, when she saw Thomas struggling up the stairs, pale and breathless, she knew something wasn't right. He hadn't admitted it, but she could see the truth. He was hiding a difficult reality. Rex didn't know about Thomas's heart problems. The dog simply knew his friend was struggling. But Rex's loyalty never wavered. Every day, when Thomas went for a walk in the garden or through the woods, Rex followed steadfastly, never leaving his side. The dog understood that his job was to protect, to help Thomas through his moments of weakness. Every step Rex took was a reassurance, a reminder that Thomas wasn't alone in his battle with his health. With Rex by his side, Thomas felt he wasn't fighting alone. Rex was always there, offering a wag of encouragement, sometimes just a look, a silent presence, but one that was solid and reassuring. That sense made Thomas feel not so alone, even as his body began to weaken. In the mornings, when Rex led Thomas through the forest, every slow, steady step seemed to help him forget about his health worries. Rex continued to walk ahead, calm and patient. Thomas always knew, no matter what happened, Rex would lead him through the toughest roads of his life. Eleanor could see it, her husband's struggle hidden beneath the surface. She knew Rex had become a pillar of strength for Thomas, but she also understood that pretending the truth didn't exist could only last so long. She wanted to help him, to get him to face his health, but she couldn't force him to do something he wasn't ready for. Eleanor knew Thomas was strong, resilient, but she also knew that when he started hiding things, it was a sign of weakness he didn't want to show. The helplessness that settled over Eleanor every time she saw Thomas trying to hold on to that brave front was overwhelming. Though he never said a word, the spark in his eyes had dimmed. She could see the signs of exhaustion in his movements, the way he sat down carefully, or how he sighed every time he stood up. She knew something was wrong, but he refused to admit it. One morning, when she saw Thomas struggling up the stairs, his face pale and his breath labored, she knew it was time to confront the truth. She didn't say anything as he tried to brush past her, but inside, a deep worry stirred within her. Thomas still tried to mask his pain, but the visible decline in his health couldn't be ignored. She approached him gently, resting her hand on his shoulder, and softly asked, "Are you okay? How are you feeling?" The simple question carried an immense amount of care. Thomas glanced at her, shaking his head, forcing a smile, but the smile was weak, unable to cover the pain that gripped him. "Don't worry, Eleanor," he replied, but his voice was faint, not like the strong, steady voice she was used to. Eleanor couldn't just sit back and watch her husband weaken. She realized that the small signs she'd brushed off before had now become too obvious to ignore. But she also knew that if Thomas wasn't ready to face the truth, she couldn't push him. Even so, she couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow seeing the man she loved, slowly fading away. Throughout those months, Rex remained by Thomas's side, a loyal companion who never left him, not even a step behind. Rex didn't know the specifics of Thomas's health, but he understood his friend needed help. The wag of his tail as Thomas walked, the silent companionship by his side whenever he grew tired, was the encouragement Thomas needed to keep his faith in life. Rex never asked questions, never judged. He simply knew one thing. His place was by Thomas's side. No matter what Thomas said or how hard he tried to hide the truth, Rex was there to remind him that even if his body weakened, the dog's presence would never fade. Thomas felt that deeply, in his soul. When the pain hit again, when the sudden aches made him want to give up, Rex stayed with him, never once leaving. The dog continued to walk with Thomas through the mornings in the forest, and every time Thomas stopped, Rex would turn back, as if saying, "Together we'll make it through." No words, just the steady wag of Rex's tail, his bright eyes full of encouragement. The dog didn't need to do anything else but be there, a loyal friend who stood by Thomas through every difficult moment. Rex didn't question, didn't ask. He just stayed, patiently beside Thomas, ready to face whatever came their way. When Thomas sat on the couch, the pain creeping through his chest once more, he knew the work had to stop. Rex would immediately settle at his feet, eyes never leaving Thomas. In those moments of weakness, when exhaustion threatened to swallow him whole, Rex's presence was a balm to his soul, easing the burden Thomas felt in his heart. Rex wasn't just a rescue dog anymore. He was the friend who had helped him through the pain, the strongest emotional protector Thomas had ever known. Rex helped Thomas find hope in the darkest times. The dog didn't need to offer advice or motivational words. All Rex had to do was be there, unwavering, non-judgmental, a constant presence at his side. And in that stillness, he helped Thomas ride out the storm in his mind. The gratitude Thomas felt for having a friend like Rex was profound. This dog wasn't just a source of physical strength, he was an invaluable pillar of emotional support, ensuring Thomas never felt truly alone. In those quiet moments, when the world outside seemed too much to bear, Rex's loyalty brought a sense of peace, reminding Thomas that he wasn't fighting the battles alone. Rex was the only certainty in Thomas's life, the one friend who never left his side. Their bond was more than just companionship. It was Thomas's lifeline, the strength he clung to when his body and soul wanted to give in. Rex was more than just a dog. He was an essential part of Thomas's world, the source of his will to keep fighting, to keep hoping. Thomas and Rex were walking as they did every morning, amidst the towering ancient trees and the crisp, fresh air of the forest near their home. Their footsteps echoed in the stillness, the only sounds being the dry leaves crunching underfoot and the steady beat of Rex's paws. But today, something felt off. A strange, unsettling tension crept through the air. Suddenly, from a distance, 3 figures emerged from the bushes. They saw Thomas and Rex, their gazes filled with hostility. Thomas stopped, narrowing his eyes as he realized these weren't just ordinary hikers. Their stares were full of scrutiny, and Thomas could feel the danger creeping closer. They were heading straight toward him. "Get off the road," one of them barked, his eyes fixed on Rex. Thomas immediately sensed the threat. One of them glanced at Rex, a clear, hungry glint in his eye. Rex, unaware, stood calmly by Thomas's side, ears perked, alert. Thomas quickly moved to shield Rex, stepping back and putting some distance between them and the strangers. "Don't do anything stupid," he warned. But the group wasn't intimidated. They kept moving forward, slowly encircling Thomas and Rex. A wave of anxiety washed over Thomas. He couldn't let them take his dog. But the leader of the group kept closing in, and Rex immediately sensed the danger. The dog growled low, his teeth flashing in the dim morning light. Rex stood firm in front of Thomas, body tense, a deep growl rumbling from his chest. The leader, feeling challenged, shot a glare at Rex and motioned for his companions to move closer. "Don't do anything foolish," Thomas warned again. But before he could act, Rex lunged forward, moving as fast as an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 4 men and 1 dog stood face to face, locked in a silent standoff of strength and will. Rex wasn't just fighting with physical force. The dog bared his teeth, wagging his tail fiercely, his body showing the strength and determination to protect Thomas. He didn't back down. With a glance into Rex's eyes, Thomas knew there was nothing that could harm him now. Despite the growing sense of helplessness inside, Thomas felt a surge of confidence. Rex was there. Rex would not let him fall. The tension in the air was thick, but Rex stood his ground, an unwavering shield. Thomas didn't move, trusting in the dog's strength, knowing that no matter how much the world might try to break them, Rex would always stand between him and danger. In Thomas's heart, the presence of Rex, this silent, unwavering protection, made him feel stronger than he had in a long time. One of the strangers, realizing that Rex wouldn't be intimidated, signaled for the others to step back. They didn't want to risk getting any closer to such a fierce dog. Rex, with his strong, protective instincts, didn't stop. He kept watching them, not allowing anyone to advance any further. When the group finally retreated and walked away, Rex returned to Thomas's side. Thomas could feel the fatigue in Rex's breath, the slight scratches on his body. But Rex stood tall, his gaze unyielding. Thomas felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Rex," he whispered. Those words didn't even begin to convey everything he felt, but for both of them, it was all they needed to say in that moment. Thomas and Rex resumed their walk, just like every morning, between the towering ancient trees and the fresh air of the forest near their home. Their footsteps echoed through the stillness, broken only by the rustling of dry leaves underfoot and the steady, strong sound of Rex's paws. But today, something felt different. A strange tension seemed to linger in the air. Suddenly, from the distance, a group of 3 people emerged from the bushes. They saw Thomas and Rex, their eyes filled with hostility. Thomas paused, squinting as he realized these weren't ordinary hikers. The looks in their eyes were calculating, and Thomas could sense the danger growing closer. They were coming right toward him. "Get off the road!" one of them barked, eyes fixed firmly on Rex. Thomas immediately felt the threat in the air. One of the men shot a glance at Rex, his eyes flickering with something dangerous, a clear desire. Rex, unaware, stood tall beside Thomas, ears perked, alert. Thomas quickly pushed Rex behind him, trying to keep a safe distance. "Don't do anything stupid," he warned, but the men didn't seem afraid. They continued to approach, slowly closing in on Thomas and Rex. Thomas felt the growing sense of anxiety. He couldn't let them take his dog, but the leader of the group was getting closer, and Rex, sensing the threat, reacted immediately. The dog growled deeply, his teeth flashing in the dim morning light. Rex stood firm in front of Thomas, body tense, and growled with a deep, commanding voice. The leader, feeling challenged, glanced at Rex and waved his hand, signaling for his companions to back off. "Don't do anything foolish," Thomas warned again. But before he could react further, Rex lunged forward, moving faster than a flash, and in the next heartbeat, 4 men and 1 dog were locked in a standoff, a battle of wits and raw power. Rex wasn't just fighting with physical strength. The dog bared his teeth, wagging his tail with force, showing his strength and determination to protect Thomas. He didn't back down. With a single glance at Rex's fierce eyes, Thomas knew that nothing could hurt him now. Even though a sense of helplessness began to rise within him, Rex's presence, this unspoken protection, made him feel steadier than ever. Rex was more than just a dog. He was Thomas's shield, his unyielding companion in the face of danger. With Rex beside him, Thomas could feel a sense of calm in the chaos. No matter what the world threw at him, Rex would always be there, standing strong, never faltering. One of the strangers, seeing that Rex wouldn't be intimidated, signaled for the group to back off. They weren't willing to take the risk of confronting such a fierce dog. Rex, with his strong protective instincts, didn't stop. He continued to watch them, not allowing anyone to come closer. When the last of the strangers stepped back and left, Rex returned to Thomas's side. Thomas could feel the fatigue in the dog's breath, the small wounds on his body. But Rex remained firm, his gaze full of determination. Thomas felt a deep, overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Rex," Thomas whispered. The words didn't even begin to express what he felt in that moment, but for both of them, it was all they needed to say. Thomas and Rex continued walking, as they did every morning, through the stillness of the forest. But today, something felt off. A strange tension hung in the air. Suddenly, from the distance, a group of strangers emerged from the brush. They weren't casual hikers or tourists. Their looks were full of challenge and malice. A few of them started to move closer to Thomas and Rex, their eyes greedily eyeing the dog. No one could guess their intentions, but one thing was clear. They didn't come with good intentions. Thomas, used to life's challenges, immediately felt the danger of the situation, but he also knew that Rex would never back down in the face of danger. He looked into Rex's eyes, as if exchanging a silent message, and instantly Rex lunged forward, ready to protect Thomas. The strangers had no idea that Rex wasn't just any dog. This German shepherd had been through countless battles, and he wasn't afraid to stand up for his owner. The blows from the group didn't faze Rex. He fought bravely, step by step, protecting Thomas. Each wag of Rex's tail was a promise. "I will protect you. I will never give up." Thomas, terrified, could do nothing but watch. A wave of guilt surged inside him. Rex was his only friend, and here he was, facing these violent strangers just to protect him. Thomas felt powerless, unable to do anything but observe. As Rex fought off the group, one of them swung a metal rod at the dog. Rex stumbled, but still, he stood firm, continuing to protect Thomas. Once again, the strangers tried to shove Rex out of the way, but the dog refused to back down. A powerful strike from the metal rod sent Rex tumbling to the ground, but just moments later, he was back on his feet, no sign of retreat in his eyes, his face still full of resolve. Thomas couldn't take it any longer. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the forest. But the strangers didn't halt. Determined not to let Rex suffer anymore, Thomas pulled a gun from his belt, and with a single shot, the sound of the bullet rang out like a warning. The sharp sound froze the air in the forest. The criminals stopped, their eyes flashing with fear. Finally, they turned and fled, but a heavy sense of guilt weighed on Thomas's heart. As the group left, Thomas rushed to Rex's side, his loyal friend. The sight was heartbreaking. Rex, though wounded, still stood tall, his breathing labored, his fur matted with blood from the injuries. Rex's steps slowed, but there was no sign of defeat. The dog remained steadfast beside Thomas, silent but sending him a message. "I'm here. Always here with you." "Rex, are you okay?" Thomas asked, his voice breaking, eyes red with worry. Rex just looked at him, his gaze sharp and unwavering, as it always had been. A rush of guilt surged in Thomas's chest. He felt like he hadn't done enough to protect the dog. Rex turned back to face him, his eyes full of affection, lowering his head and leaning into Thomas as if to say, "It's okay. I'll always be here with you." In that moment, Thomas understood that Rex's sacrifice wasn't just physical. It was an unconditional giving of himself. He realized that Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a bond Thomas couldn't replace. Rex's wounds weren't just a reminder of physical sacrifice. They symbolized the unbreakable connection between them. Rex had given him more than just protection. He had given him the mental strength to keep going, to face every challenge life threw at him. Thomas crouched down and gently stroked Rex's head, his hands trembling. "Thank you, Rex," he whispered. The words didn't come close to capturing the depth of his emotions, but for both of them, it was all they needed to say in that moment. Rex wasn't just a rescue dog. Rex was the only friend Thomas could trust, the protector, the reason he could keep fighting, keep hoping. When his eyes met Rex's, his heart swelled with emotion. Rex's gaze, full of unwavering strength, made Thomas feel a bond deeper than anything he'd ever known. He had never felt like he could rely on anyone the way he relied on Rex. This dog had given him what he had lost long ago: trust, peace, and a hope he thought was gone forever. Just as he was absorbing the weight of those emotions, a sharp pain suddenly pierced through Thomas's chest. The constriction hit so fast, it froze him in place. His heart raced erratically, but all he could see in front of him was Rex, still standing strong by his side. Thomas couldn't hide the pain anymore. His legs wobbled, and he had to grab onto a nearby tree to steady himself. The pain wouldn't subside, but with Rex by his side, everything seemed a little more bearable. Rex, unaware of Thomas's pain, stood firm beside him, his bright eyes filled with concern, but never leaving Thomas's side. Thomas could feel his own breath coming in short, labored gasps, but in that moment, with Rex there, he didn't feel alone. Despite his body fighting against him, Thomas realized that Rex's sacrifice wasn't just physical, it was a deep, emotional shield that couldn't be replaced. A weak smile spread across Thomas's face as he looked into Rex's eyes, but the pain in his chest still made it hard to breathe. "Thank you, Rex," he whispered again, his hand gently petting the dog's head, the lump in his throat growing bigger. Those words couldn't express everything he felt, but inside, Thomas knew Rex was an irreplaceable part of his life. With Rex by his side, Thomas felt a new sense of trust. Even as his health deteriorated, even as the future seemed uncertain and fraught with challenges, Rex had given him the emotional protection he never knew he needed. Thomas realized his life couldn't continue without Rex, this friend who had helped him through every hardship, every pain. The guilt in Thomas's heart swelled as he thought of the wounds Rex had endured. But in that moment, Thomas knew. Rex wasn't just a protector. This dog had become the heart of his strength, the one thing that made him feel like he wasn't fighting this battle alone. Rex wasn't just Thomas's protector. He had become the lifeline Thomas hadn't realized he needed. The dog wasn't just saving him from physical danger, but from the weight of his own despair. Through the unconditional friendship and sacrifice Rex offered, Thomas had rediscovered the strength to keep fighting, to keep living. "Together we'll get through this, Rex," Thomas whispered, not just to the dog, but to himself. It was a reminder that life could still move forward, no matter how difficult it seemed. The two of them continued walking, slow and steady, simply enjoying the fresh air and the peacefulness of nature. Under Rex's determined steps, Thomas felt lighter, as if the weight of his worries was starting to dissolve. But little did they know, a storm was quietly approaching, threatening to take it all away. Suddenly, a sharp pain gripped Thomas's chest, causing him to stop dead in his tracks. It felt as though a heavy weight had pressed down on his chest, making it impossible to breathe. He stood still, clutching his chest, unable to do anything except gasp for air. The pain wasn't just physical. It felt like a sense of hopelessness, as though his body was rebelling against everything. Rex, noticing the change in Thomas's breathing, immediately stopped. The dog turned, his sharp eyes scanning Thomas's pale face. Without a word, Rex rushed to Thomas's side, letting out a low growl as if trying to get his attention. Rex stood firm beside Thomas, nudging him gently with his large nose, trying to keep him alert. Thomas struggled to stay upright, but dizziness and pain made him sway to one side. Rex didn't leave his side. The dog's bright eyes were filled with worry, yet unwavering in their loyalty. Rex, with all his strength, stood beside Thomas, guarding him in this moment of danger, like the true friend he was. Each glance from Rex was an invisible encouragement, a reminder that Thomas wasn't alone. As the tension stretched on, Thomas began to feel the physical changes in his body more acutely. The chest pains grew more intense, each step a painful reminder of how his body was betraying him. His body wasn't responding as it once did. Sweat poured from his forehead, his limbs heavy. He felt as if he was walking on the edge of a precipice. Despite his past as a former cop, facing danger countless times, Thomas now realized his health was slipping away. The pain struck again, sharper than before. These chest pains weren't new, but this time they were relentless and powerful, pressing down harder than he could bear. His breath quickened, each second feeling like it was dragging him closer to an abyss. Rex stood by his side, steadfast, watching him with concern. Though Rex couldn't comprehend the full extent of Thomas's health, his instinct to protect was all-consuming. The dog raised his head, watching Thomas's every move as if sensing the gravity of the situation. There was no sign of exhaustion or fear in Rex. He was there, unwavering, a symbol of loyalty and strength. Thomas felt the weight of helplessness creep in. He couldn't fix this, couldn't stop what was happening to his body. He could only stand still, leaning on Rex for support. Everything around him began to blur. He couldn't fully understand what was happening, but the fear started to consume him. He feared that he wouldn't make it through this, that he might not survive this pain. Yet, despite everything, Rex was there. His presence, calm and strong, grounded Thomas in a way nothing else could. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was a friend, a protector. And in that moment, he was all Thomas had to hold on to. Thomas's mind raced with fear, but through it all, Rex's presence remained his constant anchor. The pain raged on in his chest, relentless and sharp, but it was Rex, his loyal companion standing firmly by his side, that kept him grounded. Each second felt like an eternity, his body weakening, his heart beating erratically. But in that moment, with Rex there, Thomas realized something crucial. It wasn't just the physical pain he had to face. It was the fear of losing everything. And Rex was the only thing that kept him from falling into that abyss. In the past, Thomas had always believed he could face everything on his own. But now, in this fragile moment, he understood that the only thing that kept him standing was Rex. The dog wasn't just a protector of his body. Rex had become the only emotional anchor Thomas had. Every wag of Rex's tail, every glance into the dog's unwavering eyes gave Thomas strength, courage, and the will to keep going. But still the fear gnawed at him. He feared he wouldn't survive this, that he wouldn't make it through the storm in his chest. But no matter how much the fear overwhelmed him, Rex's presence never wavered. It was a quiet flame, flickering, but never dying. Even in the darkest moments, Rex was the one thing that made Thomas feel there was still a reason to fight, a reason to hope. The two of them continued their walk through the forest, but in one fleeting moment, Thomas felt a sharp pain strike his chest, too much to bear. Suddenly, the pain became overwhelming, his body freezing, unable to stay upright. His legs felt like they would give way, and he couldn't hold himself steady anymore. Rex, ever the vigilant companion, noticed the change instantly. It wasn't suspicion or hesitation. It was pure, instinctual protection. The dog knew what he had to do. Rex rushed to Thomas's side, his strong paws moving quickly, nudging Thomas with his broad nose, looking directly into his eyes as though trying to anchor him to the present moment. Thomas tried to rise, but the searing pain in his chest was too much, causing him to collapse to the ground. Rex didn't leave him. The dog stayed by his side, offering the only encouragement Thomas had left in this hopeless moment. Even though Rex couldn't fully understand what was happening to Thomas, his presence alone was a comfort, a reminder that Thomas was not alone in his fight. Rex knew his role wasn't just to protect Thomas physically, it was also to provide emotional strength, to remind his owner that he was still here. But even Rex, with his steadfast loyalty, was beginning to show signs of wear. The dog, though pushing through exhaustion, remained determined to keep his focus on the one thing that mattered: Thomas's safety. The pain in Thomas's chest intensified, and the fear of what might happen next crept into his thoughts. He realized how serious his condition had become, and the helplessness began to flood him. He couldn't fight this on his own. The overwhelming thought that he might not make it, that he couldn't go on without Rex, consumed him. "I can't. Not like this," Thomas muttered to himself. He wanted to rise, to fight through the pain, but his body refused to cooperate. The fatigue, the agony, made everything around him feel as though it was slipping away. In that fleeting moment, Thomas knew something deep in his heart. Without Rex, life would have no meaning. The pain wasn't just physical. It was the fear of losing Rex, of losing the only companion who had stayed by his side through it all. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was the reason Thomas had held on for so long. And now, as Thomas fought to hold on, it was Rex's loyalty and love that kept him tethered to life, to hope. Thomas could feel the weight of the moment. With every step, every breath, he looked at Rex, the one thing in his life that had remained unwavering. Rex, despite his own fatigue, stood firm beside him, a silent guardian. The dog's eyes, full of loyalty and concern, struck a chord deep inside Thomas's heart. How could he allow Rex to leave his side? How could he continue when the one friend he trusted most was weakening? Thomas had always believed in Rex's strength. But now, as he faced the reality of his own body's decline, he understood that he couldn't survive without him. Each time he met Rex's intelligent, loyal eyes, he felt a bond that words couldn't describe. Rex wasn't just a protector or a companion. He had become an irreplaceable part of Thomas's life. But now, as he stood there with Rex beside him, the guilt surged again. He couldn't protect Rex, couldn't stop the pain his friend had suffered just to keep him safe. The guilt, worry, and fear washed over him like an overwhelming tide. As he walked alongside Rex through the forest, Thomas knew these moments were precious. He realized that life, friendship, and Rex's unwavering loyalty had given him more than he could ever have imagined. Even when life felt impossibly hard, Rex remained, his light in the darkest corners of Thomas's existence. With every step they took, Sarah felt the tension building inside her. Though she wasn't sure if Thomas was still alive, she placed her trust in Rex, this resilient German shepherd. The small group continued to follow Rex, leaving the ambulance behind as they ventured deeper into the thick woods, 2 humans and 1 courageous dog forging ahead. Rex led the way steadily, his paws firm and sure, despite the wear on his body. Each wag of his tail was a spark of hope for Sarah, a reminder that this dog, with his determination, was more powerful than she could have imagined. As they walked deeper into the forest, the undergrowth growing thicker, the mud beneath their feet more treacherous, they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to. The tension in Sarah's chest tightened. Time was slipping away too quickly. She couldn't stop thinking about Thomas and what awaited them ahead. With each passing second, Thomas's life seemed more fragile, and Sarah found herself wondering if they would arrive in time to save him. Rex showed no sign of fatigue. Though his body seemed to be growing weaker with each step, he pressed on, never looking back, never slowing. The dog refused to let Thomas face this danger alone. Each time Sarah felt the anxiety creeping in, Rex would turn back, his eyes meeting hers, as if telling her, "It's okay, we're still going." He was a constant, a reminder that they couldn't give up, not while Rex was there. Sarah could feel the sacrifice and determination in Rex. She realized that Rex was more than just a rescue dog. He was a powerful, unwavering friend in Thomas's and her own life. The silent patience in Rex's presence made Sarah feel deep respect. Not everyone is willing to sacrifice so much. To protect those they love, Rex had endured countless challenges, pain, exhaustion, yet he pressed forward, never once wavering. Rex didn't just protect physically, his loyalty provided a mental strength that helped both Thomas and Sarah face their challenges. This realization made Sarah even more determined. Every hardship they faced seemed more bearable with Rex by their side. The dog had become an invaluable source of emotional support, making Sarah fearless, focused only on moving forward, on finding Thomas. Amid the exhaustion and tension, Sarah understood that Rex wasn't just Thomas's companion. He was her protector, too. With Rex by her side, she felt that nothing was impossible to overcome. His courage, loyalty, and perseverance had given strength to both her and Jake, urging them forward even when they knew that everything ahead was uncertain. Sarah could see the clear signs of exhaustion on Rex's face as he stopped for a moment to catch his breath. His body trembled with fatigue, and every step seemed like a struggle. Yet Rex didn't hesitate. He never faltered. Despite his aching limbs and heavy breath, he continued leading the way with an unyielding determination. There were no words that could capture the sacrifice Rex was making with every step he took. Jake looked at Rex with concern in his eyes. He began to realize that Rex wasn't just physically exhausted, he was battling a deeper weariness within himself. Jake felt the pressure rise, knowing time was slipping away too quickly. With each passing minute, Thomas's condition seemed to grow more dire. But when Jake looked at Rex, the sacrifice the dog was making filled him with profound respect. Rex wasn't just a physical protector. He was a massive source of mental strength. Jake no longer saw just a rescue dog. He saw a loyal friend, one who asked for nothing in return, never complained, only focused on the task at hand with unwavering resolve and unconditional love for Thomas. Rex's gaze, though tired, remained sharp and full of determination. The dog never backed down, never showed signs of fatigue, even as his body weakened. Rex pressed forward like a quiet companion, stepping into every danger to protect Thomas. Each of his steps was a reminder of the unconditional sacrifice, of the boundless love Rex had for Thomas. Sarah and Jake realized they weren't just following a dog who was trying to save their friend. They were following an incredible companion, someone who had given everything without asking for anything in return. The worry and exhaustion pressed on all three of them, but seeing Rex's unwavering determination only made them more resolute. Rex might not have the strength he had before, but the persistence in his eyes ignited hope in Sarah and Jake. They couldn't help but feel proud and grateful for him. Despite the exhaustion and nearing the point of collapse, Rex didn't abandon the important task at hand. Sarah and Jake followed Rex, not only because they trusted his guidance, but because they could feel the love and sacrifice Rex had for Thomas. And so, in a forest filled with danger, amidst the growing weariness of Rex's body, an invaluable friendship was maintained, and Rex continued to lead, with a strong belief that he would never let Thomas face this alone. As Rex, with whatever strength he had left, continued guiding Sarah and Jake through the dense forest, The air remained thick with tension. Every step Rex took was heavy, but there was no sign that the dog would stop. Sarah and Jake, despite their own fatigue and worry, held an unwavering trust in Rex's persistence, the friend who would never give up. The forest grew darker, but everything inside Sarah and Jake seemed to quiet when Rex suddenly stopped. Sarah saw a faint figure ahead in the distance. Rex stood still, his eyes sharp, focused on Thomas. The sight made them rush toward him, their hearts pounding, guilt creeping into every breath. Thomas lay motionless in the grass and underbrush, looking completely drained of energy. His coat was dirty, with minor wounds that still managed to cause Sarah concern. His body lay still, offering no movement. Time seemed to stop in that moment, and everything around them blurred. It was just Sarah and Jake, both of them resolved in the understanding that they couldn't let Thomas fall into this state again. "Thomas," Sarah whispered as she rushed closer, turning his hand over to check his pulse. Her cold fingers felt the faint thrum of a heartbeat. "He's still alive," Sarah sighed with relief. But the worry still lingered deep within her. Jake quickly motioned for Sarah to call for an ambulance, while he used all his strength to help Thomas sit up. There was no time to waste, but as Sarah looked up, her eyes locked with Rex's. The dog stood strong, unmoving, but there was something in his gaze, something resolute, unmistakable. Rex was still guarding Thomas, even now, when exhaustion and pain had taken their toll on the dog's steps. No words were spoken. The world around them seemed to pause, the only sound the weight of their concern and the silence of waiting. Every step Sarah and Jake took felt like it stretched out forever, but Rex remained there, never leaving, standing vigil to protect Thomas, to guard the most important thing in their lives. The tense scene stretched on as Sarah checked Thomas's pulse again, the faint light from the ambulance outside the forest flickering dimly. There were no immediate signs of recovery. Everything felt so uncertain, yet hope hadn't been extinguished. Rex, though weary, didn't leave. He stood steadfast, his eyes as firm as ever. The dog didn't need words to communicate. In his glowing gaze, there was a quiet promise. "I won't leave you." Sarah looked into Rex's eyes, and she felt the weight of the sacrifice. Every glance from Rex, every breath he took, was a reminder of the perseverance and unconditional loyalty he had. The bond between Thomas and Rex wasn't just a friendship. It had grown into something far greater, an invisible, unbreakable connection. Despite Thomas's pain, Rex was there, not just as a physical protector, but as the irreplaceable emotional support, the unwavering source of strength. No one in the forest had ever truly been alone in these long moments, and they wouldn't be alone as long as Rex remained by their side. When the ambulance carried Thomas away from the forest, the air around Sarah and Jake seemed to empty. The world opened before them, but without Rex beside them, everything felt silent. Not because nature had gone quiet, but because the loyal friend they had fought alongside was no longer with them. At the hospital, the medical team quickly transferred Thomas into the emergency room. Sarah and Jake rushed to follow, not stopping for a moment. However, when they reached the door to the room, Rex was stopped by security. Despite Sarah and Jake's attempts to convince them, Rex couldn't go inside. Rex stood motionless outside the hospital gate, his eyes fixed on the emergency room door where Thomas was being treated. Sarah could see in Rex's gaze, so full of persistence and concern, that this was the first time in their journey that he couldn't stay close to Thomas when he needed him the most. Rex, with his big, loyal heart, wasn't allowed to follow, and it hurt the dog deeply. But as always, he stayed grounded, his unwavering loyalty speaking louder than any words could. He was Thomas's protector, his guardian, and though he couldn't be by his side in that moment, his presence would never fade from their hearts. Rex was always with them. Rex's eyes were full of loyalty and concern as he looked at Sarah and Jake, as if waiting for their permission. But Sarah could do nothing but shake her head, knowing the hospital's strict rules would not allow for it. As Thomas was wheeled into the emergency room, Sarah and Jake couldn't help but feel the emptiness without Rex by their side. Each passing second in that sterile room seemed heavier than the last. Even though the doctors were doing everything they could to save Thomas, the absence of Rex made the situation feel incomplete, a missing piece they couldn't put into words. Sarah realized that without Rex, Thomas was like a man without his strength. The dog wasn't just his companion. Rex was his emotional anchor, the silent motivation he always needed in his hardest moments. Eleanor sat by Thomas's bedside, unable to hide the worry etched across her face. She watched her husband, her heart heavy with concern. Thomas was weary, fragile, but there was something deeper that unsettled her. It was the absence of Rex. Eleanor knew that Rex was an irreplaceable part of Thomas's life. The dog had helped him endure so much pain, kept him steady every time he thought he couldn't keep going. She felt deeply that if Rex were here, things might feel different. Rex's absence created a sense of anxiety that clung to her heart. "Rex," Eleanor whispered, her eyes still fixed on Thomas, but her heart felt an emptiness too vast to fill. She wanted Rex to be there with Thomas. She knew Rex couldn't heal his physical wounds, but just having him there would make Thomas feel safer, steadier in his current state. But the hospital's rules were too strict. Sarah and Jake couldn't change anything. Thomas lay in the hospital bed, exhaustion creeping through every part of his body. Even though the medical team was doing their best, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing Rex. His loyal companion, the one who had been with him through all the tough times, wasn't here. Thomas looked around the room, but Rex wasn't there. Though he knew there was nothing he could do, the emptiness was undeniable. A deep sense of loss gripped Thomas. He had grown so accustomed to having Rex by his side during his weakest moments, times when he felt like he couldn't go on. Rex hadn't just saved him physically, but emotionally too. Every time Thomas had felt exhausted or hopeless, Rex's presence was like an invisible push to keep moving. But now, Rex wasn't there, and that absence made Thomas feel more alone than ever. Then, within Thomas's heart, a different feeling started to rise, an awareness that although Rex wasn't physically here, the dog was still out there somewhere, watching over him. He knew Rex's loyalty would never change, and no matter what happened, their friendship would never be broken. Rex was always there, protecting him in a way only Rex could. In that moment, Thomas realized something profound. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would never truly be alone again. Rex was the reason he could keep going, the reason he could still hope, and the reason he would never give up. But still, the absence of Rex, here in the hospital room, left Thomas with a heavy heart. He was so used to having the dog by his side during moments of exhaustion, when the pain became unbearable, when life seemed too much to handle. But now, in the cold, sterile walls of the hospital, the absence of Rex made everything feel even emptier, as if a vital part of him had been torn away. Nothing could replace the void left by Rex. Despite the medical team's best efforts, nothing could fill that space. Nothing could replace the unspoken bond between Thomas and Rex. It was a bond that no one, not even the most skilled doctors, could fix. It was a bond only Rex could offer, and in his absence, Thomas felt like he was losing something irreplaceable. In the quiet of the hospital room, with only the beeping of machines and the hushed voices of the staff, Thomas allowed himself to reflect on everything Rex had given him, and he understood, deep in his heart, that Rex's love and loyalty were the things that had kept him alive through it all. As the hours passed in the sterile quiet of the hospital room, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that settled in his chest. His body was weak, worn out from the strain, but it was the absence of Rex, his loyal German shepherd, that left a deeper void. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was Thomas's constant companion, the anchor in his life that held him steady through his darkest days. And now, without him by his side, everything felt out of place. Thomas had gotten used to Rex being there, always at his side, even in the toughest times. It wasn't just Rex's protection. It was his presence that offered comfort. Rex understood Thomas in ways no one else could. His calm, steady gaze and unwavering loyalty were a silent reassurance, the only thing that truly made him feel safe. But now, in the cold quiet of the hospital, Rex's absence felt like a wound too deep to ignore. Eleanor, sitting by Thomas's bedside, could see the toll it was taking on him. She could tell something was off. Thomas was fading, not just physically, but emotionally too. His eyes, once filled with the spark of determination, were now dull, distant. She knew Rex was his strength, his anchor, and without him, Thomas seemed like a man lost at sea. "Rex," Eleanor whispered under her breath, her voice breaking as she looked at Thomas. She wanted so badly to have Rex with them. She knew it wasn't about Rex being able to heal Thomas physically. It was the comfort he brought. The way Rex made Thomas feel grounded, safe. But the hospital's rules were strict, and no matter how much she and Jake tried to argue, there was no room for Rex here. The walls of the hospital, cold and imposing, didn't have the warmth that Rex brought. Thomas, in his condition, needed that warmth more than ever, and it was absent. Thomas, despite the medical staff's best efforts, couldn't shake the hollowness inside. With Rex gone, everything felt dimmer, like a part of him was missing. He thought about the walks with Rex in the forest, the way Rex's steady presence calmed him, helped him breathe easier. The way Rex was always there, never asking for anything in return but simply being by his side. Without him, Thomas didn't know how to move forward. His mind wandered back to those days when Rex would nudge him out of his darkest thoughts, share his joy, his pain, without a single word. Rex had been there through every struggle, every battle. He had helped Thomas survive not just physically, but emotionally. Without Rex, Thomas couldn't even imagine how he would have made it. But even though Rex wasn't physically there, Thomas felt something, an awareness that, in some way, Rex was still with him. Rex's loyalty had no boundaries. Even though he couldn't see him, Thomas knew Rex was somewhere out there, waiting, watching over him. The love and protection Rex had always given him hadn't gone anywhere. It was as if Rex had woven his spirit into Thomas's, and that connection would never break. In the silence of the hospital room, with all the tubes and machines buzzing around him, Thomas realized that, even without Rex at his side, his bond with the dog was unshakable. Rex had taught him how to fight, how to survive, how to find hope when there was none. And in this moment, even though the room felt cold and empty without him, Thomas knew that the love Rex gave him would never fade, no matter the distance. Outside, Rex stood in the hospital courtyard, staring up at the windows of Thomas's room. His body was tired, but his spirit remained strong. He couldn't go in, but that didn't matter. Just standing outside, watching over Thomas, was enough. Rex didn't need to be physically there to protect Thomas. His loyalty, his love, transcended everything. It was a silent vow, one that Rex had made the moment he became a part of Thomas's life. His presence was enough. The steady clip-clop of Rex's paws echoed quietly in the courtyard, his ears perked up, always alert. His stance was firm, unwavering, just as it had always been. Rex didn't need to see Thomas to protect him. He didn't need permission to do what he had always done, Be there, be loyal, be the constant in Thomas's ever-changing world. No matter what happened next, Thomas knew one thing for sure. Rex's love was a constant. Sarah and Jake, despite being inside the hospital, could still feel Rex's presence. They both knew that even though Rex couldn't visit Thomas, the dog's strength and sacrifice were driving them forward. Rex's persistence had given them hope that everything would be okay. Thomas would pull through, and Rex would remain an irreplaceable part of the journey. Hope never fades, even when things are unclear. While Thomas lay there, battling his health, hope was the faint light flickering in his soul. It was the hope born of a great friendship, of sacrifice, and Rex's unwavering loyalty. Sarah and Jake didn't speak much, but both could sense that Rex was more than just a dog. He wasn't just a part of Thomas's life. He was the thread connecting them all. They looked at Rex standing firm outside the hospital, and a sense of deep trust grew in their hearts. Even though Rex couldn't go in and see Thomas, he was still the most important companion in this journey, always ready to protect and fortify everyone's spirits. Though Thomas didn't have Rex beside him during these critical moments, the belief in their friendship would never fade. Rex was always there, outside the hospital door, waiting, like an incredible friend whose presence couldn't be described in words. Thomas had made progress, partially thanks to Eleanor's diligent care and Rex's constant companionship. Each passing day saw improvements in Thomas's physical health, but his mental state was still a huge challenge. He had made it through the darkest days, but the physical pain hadn't completely subsided. However, one thing was clear: Rex's presence had eased the anxiety in Thomas's heart. Though Rex couldn't be by his side in the hospital, Thomas knew the dog was standing strong outside, patient and unwavering. After so much time fighting illness, Thomas felt the stark difference between physical and emotional healing. His body could heal, but the wounds in his soul still lingered. Still, he felt a sense of relief knowing Rex was waiting outside, like a friend who would never give up. Eleanor's care, Rex's emotional support, and the small moments when Rex came to visit had helped Thomas gradually regain his will to live. Each day, Thomas woke up with a renewed determination, because he knew Rex wasn't just a rescue dog, he was a loyal friend, a massive source of encouragement that helped him face his fears and insecurities. That feeling gave Thomas the strength to keep going, not to give up. Every time Thomas and Rex reunited in the hospital, even if it was just through a window, with tail wags and silent gestures of affection, it only deepened their bond. Every time Rex stood outside the hospital door, Thomas felt like a part of him returned. Rex's presence made Thomas realize the dog wasn't just a physical protector, but a powerful emotional anchor. The sense of security Rex provided made Thomas feel more solid in life. Rex was the irreplaceable friend, not only in dangerous moments, but throughout every significant moment of his life. Even though Thomas didn't have Rex with him during the most crucial moments, the trust in their friendship never wavered. Rex was always there, outside the hospital door, waiting, like a magnificent friend whose presence couldn't be put into words. Rex's presence made Thomas feel like he'd never have to face anything alone. He could feel that no matter where he was, Rex would always be there, supporting, protecting, and loving. Each day, Thomas grew stronger. The combination of medical care and emotional support was the most important factor in overcoming life's trials. But one thing never changed. That was Rex's unwavering presence. Though Rex couldn't go into the hospital, the tail wags through the window, the unwavering look in the dog's eyes, were the most significant moments for Thomas. Thomas knew that his recovery wasn't just about medicine, but about that great friendship. He realized that in the darkest moments, Rex's resilience and the unconditional love the dog had for him were indispensable in his journey to live. Thomas no longer felt alone, and he knew that no matter what challenge lay ahead, Rex would always be by his side, helping him stand firm. Thomas's recovery wasn't just physical, it was spiritual too. Every day, when he saw Rex, Thomas found new belief in life. The feeling of being protected and cared for by such a wonderful friend like Rex made Thomas feel that no matter how many challenges he faced, he would never have to face them alone. Rex was not just a rescue dog. He was a loyal friend, an invaluable source of support, helping Thomas conquer fear and pain throughout the difficult times. Thomas knew that it was Rex's unwavering spirit and love that helped him recover quickly. Each morning when Rex was there beside him, the wag of the tail, the determined gaze, made him feel at peace. Every small gesture from Rex brought an indescribable joy to Thomas, as if nothing was impossible to overcome when Rex was by his side. Each time Thomas looked into Rex's eyes, he felt that unconditional loyalty. Rex's gaze wasn't just one of care, but of immense encouragement. Thomas realized their bond had transcended normal friendship. It had become a deep connection that he had never felt with anyone else. Rex had helped him learn to love himself again, accept his flaws, and overcome the deep fears within him. When Rex approached Thomas, even if it was just the gentle wag of the tail or a soft lick on his hand, Thomas felt an extraordinary strength, a silent support. Their friendship had become an unbreakable bond. Without words, just with Rex by his side, Thomas knew that no challenge was insurmountable. Emotion overwhelmed Thomas as he realized that each day of his life mattered, not because of any material outcome, but because Rex was by his side. Every step they took together was proof of the strength of friendship and eternal loyalty. The mornings, the quiet moments in nature with Rex, were the times when Thomas felt truly alive, truly loved. With Rex by his side, he didn't just feel safe, but he had hope that no matter how difficult things got, they would always face them together. Though Thomas had physically recovered, a lingering fear still remained within him. The fear that one day his life would go on without Rex. He worried about a future without the one friend he trusted, the friend who had never abandoned him. The days spent with Rex had become a crucial part of Thomas's life. Those moments weren't just comfort, but hope that kept him going. Rex had always been there for him during the hardest times, and Thomas feared that without him, he would again face the desperate loneliness he had experienced after loss. Thomas reflected on the relationship between him and Rex. Rex's love and sacrifice had not only helped him overcome physical challenges, but had also been a huge source of emotional strength. With the threat of Martin and his gang, but Rex didn't hesitate for a second. With a fierce growl, Rex launched himself forward, protecting Thomas like the warrior he had always been. The attackers thought they could overpower him, but they had no idea that Rex wasn't just any dog. He was a fighter, loyal to the end, and his will to protect Thomas was unmatched. Thomas stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't help but feel a mixture of fear and admiration as he watched Rex go up against the men who meant him harm. Despite the exhaustion and pain that still lingered in Rex's body, the dog's determination was palpable. For Rex, nothing mattered more than the safety of Thomas. His loyalty was a force of nature, unwavering even in the face of danger. The fight escalated quickly, but Rex was relentless. Every bite, every movement was made with a singular purpose: to protect Thomas. The men tried to push Rex back, but the German Shepherd's resolve was stronger than their attacks. They underestimated him, and now they were paying the price. Rex's fierce defense wasn't just physical. It was an unspoken promise to Thomas that no matter what happened, he would never be alone. As the struggle continued, Thomas realized how much he relied on Rex, not just for physical protection, but for his unwavering spirit. He had always been the one to rescue others, but now in his weakened state, it was Rex who was fighting for him, standing between him and the danger that loomed over their lives. There was no turning back now. Thomas felt a deep sense of gratitude and awe for the dog that had saved him time and time again. The attackers began to retreat, realizing they couldn't win against Rex's strength and resolve. Rex stood over Thomas, panting heavily, his body bruised but unbroken. The fight was over, but the bond between them had only grown stronger. Rex had once again proven that he wasn't just a dog. He was family. Thomas's protector, his warrior, his friend. Thomas knelt beside Rex, his voice trembling with emotion as he whispered, "Thank you, buddy. I'll never be able to repay you for this." Rex looked up at him, his eyes filled with loyalty, understanding that words weren't necessary. The love and gratitude Thomas felt were evident in every glance, every touch he shared with Rex. As the adrenaline began to fade, Thomas felt the weight of what had just happened. They had survived, but it wasn't just because of Thomas's strength or the medical help he received. It was because of Rex's loyalty, his courage, and the unwavering love that had driven him to protect Thomas no matter the cost. They were more than just man and dog. They were a team, bound by a bond that couldn't be broken. With the danger averted, Thomas felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing that Rex was still there, always by his side. He wasn't alone anymore, and with Rex's protection, he felt stronger than ever. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Thomas knew one thing for sure. He could face them as long as he had Rex by his side. As Rex stood firm, his body exhausted but unwavering, he knew this could be his final battle. But Rex didn't care about his fatigue or the pain that weighed him down. His sole purpose was clear: protect Thomas. Every step he took was a testament to the loyalty that ran deeper than anything Thomas could express. Martin, seeing that Rex was not so easily defeated, didn't back down. The attackers tried to overwhelm Rex, but the strength and resilience of the dog held them back. In that moment, Thomas realized something so profound that it stopped his heart for a moment. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was everything to him, his protector, his lifeline. All the suffering, the loneliness, the despair Thomas had faced meant nothing without Rex by his side. Without Rex, Thomas knew he couldn't face life, not with the same courage. Rex wasn't just his companion, he was his eternal hope, the reason he could continue living, despite everything. Despite being on the brink of collapse, Rex stood between Thomas and his enemies, unwavering. His body was weak, but nothing could shake the bond he shared with Thomas. The dog leaped into battle once more, driven by love and loyalty. The battle was fast, brutal, and silent. All you could hear were the growls of Rex, the heavy breathing of Thomas, and the clash of bodies. The attackers, armed and powerful, couldn't break Rex's will. The dog fought through the pain, through exhaustion, with no fear. Each strike he made sent a message: "I'm here, and I will protect." Thomas could do nothing but watch. His body was too weak to help, and every moment of helplessness tore at his heart. He wanted to fight beside Rex, but he couldn't. All he could do was stand by, feeling the crushing weight of guilt with every passing second. As Rex charged again, Thomas thought, "Why can't I help you?" But in those darkest moments, Rex turned to him, his eyes full of unwavering strength, sending an unspoken message. "Don't worry, I'm here. I'll always be here." The dog's short, determined tail wags gave Thomas the strength he needed, even though Rex was the one sacrificing. In the end, Rex drove the attackers away, but not without injury. His wounds, though not fatal, spoke of the immense sacrifice he had made to keep Thomas safe. As the enemies retreated, Rex limped back to Thomas. His legs shook, but his eyes never lost their resolve. He was exhausted, but still, he stood tall. Thomas looked at Rex, the guilt overwhelming him. He knew that without Rex he wouldn't be standing here, fighting for his life. "You're everything to me, Rex," Thomas thought, his heart aching. Rex was not just a physical protector. He was the pillar that kept Thomas from breaking mentally. Every step Rex took, every look, every moment of loyalty screamed a message: "You are not alone." The love, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty Rex had shown taught Thomas something vital: that his life had meaning, and he couldn't live without this incredible companion by his side. In that moment, amidst all the pain and sacrifice, Thomas understood that no challenge, no matter how great, would ever break him as long as Rex was there, with him every step of the way. The bond between Thomas and Rex is a testament to the unbreakable power of loyalty and unconditional sacrifice. Rex wasn't just a companion, he was a steadfast guardian, helping Thomas overcome not just physical obstacles, but the deepest, most hidden fears within himself. Every time Thomas felt weak, uncertain, or afraid, it was Rex who anchored him, reminding him that he could keep going, pushing forward toward better things. Rex's unconditional sacrifice didn't just protect Thomas physically, it opened his eyes to values he'd never understood before. Rex gave Thomas a friendship that couldn't be replaced, a friendship that could never be compared to anything else. Rex wasn't just a part of his life. He was the reason Thomas kept going, a friend he could trust more than anyone else in his life. Thomas vowed never to forget Rex's sacrifice. He would live on stronger than before to honor this great friendship. The things Rex had done for him would never be forgotten, and Thomas would live to remember what Rex had taught him about love, loyalty, and selfless sacrifice. With every step he took, Thomas knew Rex would always be in his heart. Nothing could replace this bond. Nothing could ever dull the love and loyalty Rex had given him. No matter the trials that lay ahead, no matter how hard life would get, Thomas would always remember Rex and the profound lessons his dog had given him. Their friendship would never be broken. The relationship between Thomas and Rex is a powerful reminder of the strength that comes from loyalty and sacrifice. Rex wasn't just a companion, he was a rock, a mental protector, guiding Thomas through every hardship life threw at him. Regardless of how life may change, the connection between them would always remain solid, providing Thomas with an invaluable source of support, reminding him to keep living, fighting, and hoping. Their friendship is a heartwarming story about love and sacrifice that we can all learn from. Rex didn't just change Thomas's life, he brought us all lessons of loyalty and empathy. Does this story remind you of your own special bond with your pet or a close friend in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us your story. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories like this.